Baby Saphira could have been the prototype for Baby Yoda. I think like
I do not think they sold very many plushies, but
they'd
have committed,
they could have.
Totally.
Dragon claw, wing and scale. Come now, let's examine a tale of the greatest beast ever considered. Another episode of Big Flying Lizards.
I want to start us off that we are a dragon movie and television podcast.
We are.
That is our area of focus. However, that doesn't mean that we can't enjoy dragon books about dragons. Literature. And I just have to, like, I really tried so hard to not let my feelings on how different it is from the book. Because again, I know we've talked about it before, but it's very important to me to be dedicated or give as much to the book as possible.
And I'm hoping we can have a conversation about this, but I'm going to let you go first here.
No, I'm going to open up the floor, but I just want to say that if we were talking strictly because of how the book and the movie relate, I hate everything about this. I don't think there's a single movie that I hate more than this movie. It does not do anything justice. It butchered a great series. I love the Eragon, the inheritance cycle, and it ruins it. It ruins it. It does everything wrong. Like, let's not even get Arya. Arya, do you know what color Arya's hair is in the book, Austin?
Not what it is in the movie?
It's black! It's black! Do you know what elves have in Eragon? They have pointed ears.
Yeah, is she an elf?
She's an elf! They say that she's a princess of Varden and Elsmira, which is the elven area. Oh my gosh, I'm getting this all out now so I can just look at this film strictly for the film purposes. But if we're going off of how it relates to the book, I hated it. And it's a garbage movie when it comes from a film adaptation from a book to a film. Now, I'm gonna let the
Okay,
What's
yeah,
your
see,
thoughts?
this is getting us right into the conversation that I wanted to have up top. Welcome to Big Flying Lizards, a dragon movie and television podcast. It is a very exciting day because, huge notable first, we are covering our first feature film. And what is that feature film?
It is the 2006 Eragon film.
Right. So, quick rundown on that. Eragon is a 2006 film set in the medieval fantasy land of Allegasia that tells the story of a young man, Eragon, who finds a dragon egg in the woods. After it hatches, evil forces begin to close in on the boy, forcing him to flee his hometown and embrace his destiny as the one person with the power to one day defeat the evil emperor Galbatorix. The film was directed by Stefen Fangmeier with a script adapted by Peter Bachman from Christopher Paolini's novel of the same name. Eragon was generally met with unfavorable reviews from audiences and critics, with fans expressing dissatisfaction over deviations from the source material.
I wonder why. I wonder why.
Because there are some pretty big differences between Paolini's book. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay. His book and the film that we got in 2006.
Yes.
Just, I believe 4 years after the book was published.
I think so.
So it was very much in the zeitgeist. Like, this was one of the most popular young adult novels of the time. Very widely consumed. That's why it got fast-tracked to film. And I think that's at the core of why this movie is still, I think, to this day, kind of in the conversation as one of the worst movies of all time.
Yes.
Me, personally, I think that is kind of silly.
Well, and as we'll discuss, and I really did try to watch.
There are problems with this movie.
There are
We'll get
problems.
into it, but the adaptation thing.
I hate the movie if we're strictly talking about it from book to movie. When we're just talking about the movie itself, I mean, I've seen far worse movies. I've seen significant...
It's not that bad.
Yeah, like, it really isn't that bad. But the fact of the matter is, And I want to get your thoughts on this. I feel like if you're going to deviate, like if you're doing a movie off of a book, you either have to really grind in and put a lot of work into creating your own adaptation off of it to make it so it's something that the fans are really going to enjoy, or you just have to follow like page by page on what's going on and cutting out like the fluff.
Well, I think that's a thankless pursuit. Because anytime that you're setting out that it's like, okay, I'm trying to adapt exactly what this book is into a film. Like a film is a more defined thing. And like, yes, you have more space in a book, but a movie, it's like everybody is seeing the same visual representation. Everybody has a different idea in their head when they're reading the book. So if that is your goal in creating a film, you're never going to get there. You might be able to realize your perception of the novel, but you're not going to satisfy the vast majority of readers.
All I'll counter with is, and again, I know the budgets for these two different films are very different, but look what Harry Potter was able to do. Like Harry Potter was a successful young adult literature, and it blew up and became the monolith that it is today. And yes, they deviated from the source material from time to time again, but it still did a pretty good job at bringing what's in the book to life.
I agree. And Harry Potter's kind of a gold standard here.
It is
where most of the changes they made, I'm on board with.
Yes.
And if it's not apparent already, like I am pro change. Like I am pro for a movie being what it's going to be. I am pro for like a director having that power.
I am anti-laziness, Austin.
That is another conversation.
But that's, again, where a lot of my gripes come from when it comes to literature. I feel like they were just so lazy with it. Like I don't think that...
I don't really feel... I disagree. I don't think that the laziness is the actual issue here. So I think I've made my point. The whole adaptation thing isn't what I think this movie's problems are. I think that is like, again, the thankless pursuit. It was never going to be what you had in your head. And I think that any deviations from that source material are only a problem when there are other problems that are making you like notice that other path that wasn't taken and sort of idealize that. So once it's like, okay, once other things are starting to fall apart, it's like, oh, but you had this right here. You just do the course as written.
The only pushback is there's one character in particular, and I don't want to be jumping ahead too far, but I think it's prevalent for this conversation. Jeremy Irons, I think, embodied Brom amazingly. I don't think that there's anybody that embodied their characters better.
He's really good in this movie.
He is really good.
Like I'm just like, okay, just pluck him and put him in the Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, and like he's hanging with the best of them.
Yeah, like I genuinely think that his performance, like it's not even close. I don't think there's anybody that even comes close. And there were other people that did well. I feel like Robert Carlyle, Durza, he did all right. I feel like he did a pretty convincing job.
I'm gonna want to have a conversation on his character in a while. He's good.
He's good.
Honestly, I feel like Ed Spilliers is not that bad
for his first movie.
It's his very first movie, and this is $100 million plus budget, like intended blockbuster.
Yeah.
So. I guess we'll just get into that.
Yeah, let's just dive right in.
Okay. I think it's going to be a second before we actually get to like breaking down any scenes, because there's a lot. I think talking around what this movie is and like what went right and what went wrong in broader senses is a lot more interesting than actually digging into like the quote unquote meat of the film.
If you want to know what happens in the film, you've got to suffer with us and go watch the film.
It's not that bad. It's really...
If you read the book, it's that bad.
Oh, and that's some more context that I feel like we should get out of the way up top, is that I did read these books as a child.
Yes.
And this might have been the first time as a child that I was looking forward to a movie and then was let down by it. Like coming out of the movie, I was like, I did not like that. And most of it was the whole, like, it didn't match it wasn't a faithful adaptation, which I have kind of gotten away from. It's sort of warmed me up to the movie since, because I haven't revisited the novels since then.
Yeah.
And I think I was 9 when this movie came out. So I haven't read the first Eragon book in like 16, 17 plus years.
Yeah.
Bryce, you have read.
Yeah.
You have revisited these books much more recently.
I mean, shocker, I have an obsession with fantasy, and so I try to I know.
You?
Shocker. So I've revisited the Eragon book, the Inheritance Cycle.
Does it hold up?
I still enjoy them. Like, they're clearly meant for children. Like, you can tell that it's very much like...
So what's the ideal age to read the Inheritance Cycle?
The thing is, like, and I don't know if you picked up on this when you were watching the movie, the early 2000s were a lot more violent, like, for kids media than...
Return of the King. I watch a lot of movies and a lot of stuff that's out there, a lot of horror stuff. Return of the King is one of the most violent movies I have ever seen. That movie should be rated R like 10 times over.
They catapult heads.
They catapult heads as an intimidation technique. Severed heads.
And you see them roll around.
I actually think that at the time, Return of the King did have the record for most on-screen deaths of any film ever.
I believe it. There was a lot of killing in that movie. But going back to the original question, I would recommend that it's probably, I'd say either preteen or just early teen is like the ideal range for.
So like,
I'd say about 11 to 15 is the ideal range probably.
Okay.
Because especially like books 3 and 4, they get pretty intense. Like I even when I was just listening, and there's parts where I'm like, man, like this is pretty intense. And
sure. Well, I remember when I was reading the books, my dad read them with me.
Yeah.
And his whole thing is fantasy novels. So that's right up his alley. Like that's an easy sell. But he loved them too.
Yeah.
We had good conversations. We both enjoyed it. We were both looking forward to the 4th one. Good times.
And I also think it's worth noting that this movie that we watched is based off of a book that was written by an author when he was 16.
Yes. Yes. And I think a result of that is that the source material they're working with here is very derivative.
Yes. And I can also see where, like, with a Game of Thrones, they have George to go to, and George is very experienced in the film industry. He is a source of knowledge. They may have not felt as comfortable going to, what would he have been, like early 20s possibly? Like,
right. I mean, he's like mastered the art of the book tour at this point.
Yeah.
And, you know, he cranked out a couple bestsellers, but he's not... At least at that point in time, I can't imagine him having like the perspective, to be like a reliable source, the way that you're talking about with like a George R.R. Martin.
Yes, and I feel like you almost have to say it when it first comes out, but reports say he liked the movie.
I mean that's amazing to him though. Like to his credit, to like when you read the books, it's like even if you have your issues with it, it's not your thing, to know that a 16-year-old wrote this.
Yeah, like
holy cow.
That is impressive just to think, especially with like how big of a book it is, and like how, again, fantasy may not be your thing. Like young adult literature may not be your thing.
I think anyone listening to this podcast, fantasy is most definitely there.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? But no, like, if you think, like, it's an accomplishment what he was able to do, and I think it's very much worth celebrating, but I also think not having the confidence or not having the initiative to be able to reach out to him to make decisions in the film, I think really shows, and I think that could also be, again, I'm biased. I think there's a lot of laziness involved in this film. But
I'm interested to see you outline that. But on this point, the source material we're working with here is very derivative.
Yes.
Specifically to one very popular franchise, which I have to imagine Paolini was aware of.
Yes.
Because the first Eragon book, and it sort of gets away from this to its credit later in the series. The first book is Star Wars.
Yes.
By way of Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
There's no arguing it. And we're going to be talking spoilers for Eragon here, so I think it's better than its reputation. And spoilers from here on out. Did you want to get anything in before we
Spoiler alert?
Okay, the spoiler alert has been issued. You have a young boy who lives in like a farming, like rural community,
Raised by his uncle in a empire ruled by some like dark mysterious figure. Yep.
He has a older, wise sage character that after the death of his uncle in a fire. Okay, his uncle doesn't die in a fire, but then they burn it in the movie.
Yeah.
He runs off with this mentor figure to save a princess figure.
Well, first they're running off to the Rebel Alliance.
Yes. Yeah.
And they stumble across the princess.
Which this detour then leads to the sacrifice of the mentor at the hands of it's Star Wars. It's A New Hope.
It really is.
It's blatant. And part of me wants to like give that as an excuse for them to want to get away from the source material a little bit, but they didn't escape.
No,
the blatant comparisons.
No, and again, we'll get more into it, but either lean into it or lean out. Like you can't do any of this half-ass shit that they were doing. That's, again, I know it's, for me, it feels like they half-assed a lot of this. And I know you're going to disagree with some of the things, but I do have a lot of good things. I think I loved, because they filmed the movie in Hungary, Slovakia, and Canada. And I think a lot of I call them the Lord of the Rings shots, but when they're doing like the pans of the
this movie is Lord of the Rings. That is 100% what they are going for.
Yes.
I bet that the crew of this movie probably just has the Peter Jackson trilogy on loop in the video village, on a screen in the back room there.
Yes.
But the thing is, they kind of nail that aspect in a lot of regards.
It looks really good in that shot.
Yeah, the vistas, it's Weta Digital doing the effects. Recently off King Kong, those are the VFX people behind the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yes.
It's shot on film, which it does contribute to because this is kind of in that transitional era where Attack of the Clones kind of is introducing that you can do the digital thing. So and that's contributed to where a lot of movie people look at basically any movie from 2007 and before, and it's wow, that looks a lot better than any movie that comes out now.
Yeah. For
the digital versus film thing, it's a lot of practical stuff, at least for the locations.
Yeah.
To its credit, the lighting design is, again, very derivative of Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, especially in the nighttime stuff. It's 1-to-1.
Yeah.
But they're kind of nailing that aspect.
No, I agree. They really are doing an amazing job on those aspects. And
I kind of respect the impulse there to be okay, let's do Lord of the Rings is an insanely violent trilogy.
Yeah.
Let's tone that down a little bit and let's make Lord of the Rings for
children.
8 to 12-year-olds.
Which, again, I didn't realize. It's PG. It's not even PG-13.
And within all of this, I think we're outlining basically all of what I consider to be the real issues with Eragon, in that, one, it's unoriginal.
Yeah.
That is the biggest sin to me, and that makes it slightly forgettable.
And for me, and again, just to sort of go on, more. I'll let you complete, but I want to make note. If you're going to make it unoriginal, just lean completely into the source material. That's my argument that I'm making.
Another big issue is that they were banking on this being a trilogy that didn't happen.
Yes.
And you know what? No, we'll save that conversation for later. It moves too fast.
It does. This moves so fast.
I am not the type of person, like, I love a 90-minute movie. If you're under 90 minutes, that is legitimately the biggest selling point for any movie anyone is pitching me on. Like, nothing will move a movie up my watch list faster to find out it's under 90 minutes, which this movie isn't. But for a fantasy epic, it is lightning speed. I think we're like an hour 45, 46.
Literally, like in the beginning, Eragon comes to his farm, Roran appears. He's like, the mighty hunters return. They have a wrestling match, and then literally he's like, I'm leaving.
So, but I'm not the type of person to ask for a longer runtime. This movie needs at least another 15 minutes, probably another half hour.
Yes, easily.
And the last major issue that I have with this movie, which we've already kind of gotten at, is PG. It should have been PG-13.
Yeah, they should have just, again, full send it.
Just own it. I don't think that it would have hurt its box office performance.
No, for sure. And again, like for the make it PG-13, go off the source material. If you're not going to make the general populace happy, you're going to at least make the book readers happy. But at the end of the day, they tried to do this thing where they're trying to be original, trying to be kid friendly, and they made nobody happy.
Yeah. I'm kind of happy coming into this podcast. I'm getting the sense that I'm a little warmer on this than you.
Again, I really tried so hard to push the feelings of the source material off to the side and just enjoy it. But for me, just the pacing was just too quick. And there's some characters that they're so amazing in the books, and they just completely butcher them, in my opinion, in this movie.
Okay, well, that seems like something that it'll more naturally come up as we actually start discussing the film, if you're prepared to delve into that.
For sure,
a little more.
Wherever you want us to start.
Well, I will say I think it's pretty wise to start out with the voice of Jeremy Irons.
Amazing.
Who has one of the all-time great acting voices.
I know he's been in big projects, but I feel like Jeremy Irons has been one of those actors that's a great actor, but he just has been under the radar. He's not one of the A-list.
I hear what you're saying. Jeremy Irons is... I kind of like him in that zone.
I do too.
And like, he can show up for the Eragon, and he's the best performance in the movie.
Yeah.
Voice of Scar.
Yeah.
One of the,
iconic.
Maybe the greatest Disney villain of all time.
Arguably.
Maybe. I mean, we'll get to Maleficent. But, I mean, his voice, though.
Yes. You can't beat it.
I will say, though, just a very quick shout out. I want to indulge my love of Jeremy Irons here. He won an Oscar for a film called Reversal of Fortune, which is excellent. It is kind of a courtroom situation, but it's like twisty and turny and like a little pulpy 90s movie. Highly recommended. He won an Oscar from that. It is generally accepted that he won the Oscar for that film in combination with being amazing in that film and also being amazing in David Cronenberg's Dead Ringers, which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Thank you also, and some of you may understand why. Thank you, David Cronenberg.
It's a Cronenberg, so it's a little gross to get some body horror in there, but he plays a set of twins, challenging dual role. And it is, if I were to list out like my 20 favorite performances of all time, it would make the list, I think. So if you're feeling Jeremy Irons, if you love Eragon and you just need more, those are a couple good places to go.
might come as a shock to you, but I have not seen either of those films.
Have you ever seen a David Cronenberg movie?
Probably not.
Yeah, he's the body horror guy. So like
The
The Fly.
I hate horror. Like,
oh, you do? I mean, you hate horror, but it's not always like horror. It's like oh my god, like his face is turning into a giant boil.
Yeah, that's what I hate even more than like regular.
I live for that shit. I love it. But
Jeremy Irons' voice.
Yes. So the voice of Scar. The strongest performer in the movie. We start with his voice. It's some nonsense about the land was ruled of drag. Yeah, he's doing the Galadriel thing from the beginning of Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And I will keep checking in on this, how big a reference point Lord of the Rings is for this film. But I will also keep making note that they're nailing it in most aspects. Not so much in this prologue. It feels kind of obligatory.
I feel like they were really trying to go for the dragons in that opening scene because they have the Lord of the Rings shots of the aerials, and then all of a sudden we get 20 dragons on screen and they're just going at it.
Yeah. And this is jumping ahead, but I think the dragons look pretty stupid in the armor. I gotta say.
Yeah, I just free ball it. Just free ball.
Yeah, just let it be. But we're not to the dragon actual design yet. But after this like little prologue, is this to Arya?
Yeah, Arya.
Okay.
Arya and her elven guard.
The quote-unquote elf running through the woods.
Yep. They're running through the woods and they're elves. And and the Urgals. Oh my god! Don't even get me started on the Urgals.
No, I want to get you started on the.
They fucked them up. They fucked them up so bad. They were supposed to be these monsters that make orcs in Lord of the Rings look like pansies. They're supposed to be like 7 to 9 feet tall with massive horns. They all look like truck drivers. They all look like guys that have face tattoos and are truck drivers. They're not scary at all.
They are not badass. And I totally agree with you. That's another one where it's like, well, and this is what we got. You should have just done what was in the book.
Exactly.
At the very least, I wanted some differentiation because they just look like dudes.
Yeah.
Like messy dudes, like that don't shower. But there's only one exception, and it's the scene like a little later where Durza kills the one Urgal with his fingernail, which was so close to being a good scene.
Yeah, and then they ruined it with the last line.
Well, and I think just the actual act of it, because it's not apparent what he's doing, but what comes immediately after that is he goes and he uses his poison nail on Arya.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, okay, his evil magic powers are in his fingernails. But in the other, it just looks like he taps him on the side of the head and he dies. And I think that's just the PG getting in the way of it again.
It's the power off button right there.
But that Urgal that we get a bit of a close-up on, and part of this is for the close-up, where most of the Urgals we're seeing in wide shots where it's like, that's just a dude. That's just a guy at his ZZ Top concert.
Yes.
When we get this one close-up, I'm like, okay, that is a something. At least
they have the sharpened teeth.
And it's like the skin tone is dark and kind of orangey.
Yeah.
And the red eyes.
Yes.
So in that one instance, I'm like, okay, I see how you came up with this. The production crew comes to the director and this is what we have for the Urgals. And he's like, yeah. But then in the film, they don't read as intimidating or special or otherworldly, which is the reason. But this is going to be another soapbox. Part of the reason that Lord of the Rings gets away with being so violent is because you're killing orcs.
Yes.
You're doing all of these horrible, violent acts to embodiments of evil that are clearly not human. You're like, yes. Okay, what wife and child does this monster have to go home to?
Well, they've literally made an effort again. We'll do Lord of the Rings for our last 3 episodes, but they are literally being pulled out of the ground in sacks that they were literally chemistry made. They don't have wife and kids.
Yeah. So that's it's not just like the cool factor. Like I want to see like cool like demon soldiers, which I do want to see that.
Yes.
It's also like a practical thing to make the audience root for the hero. When it's just like sweaty dudes versus less dirty dudes, that's not, because this is a movie that needs to work in that binary. Like you don't have time to live in the gray here.
Yeah. No, the Urgals were a part that I got really frustrated about. Once we get to the dwarves, I'll talk about the dwarves. I have similar, but the Urgals I had a lot more gripe with because the Urgals are just so badass in the books. They are amazing. Like, I genuinely wanted to see an Urgal dragon rider in the book so badly because I don't think that there'd be anything more terrifying or badass than an Urgal dragon rider.
Yeah. I'm pretty mixed to negative on the Warcraft movie, but I'm imagining if they did the Urgals kind of like they did the orcs in that film, that would have been ideal.
Now, to be fair, that movie came out in what, 2018?
Yeah, like 10 years later.
Yeah, I mean, like, even though the special effects, I mean, there's just so much to get into.
Buckle up, y'all.
Buckle up. I think, and again, we might have conflicting ideas, but the areas that they had special effects things, I actually enjoyed the special effects that they did.
It's the strongest aspect of the movie.
Yes.
Do you know why that is?
Because they put all their money into it.
Well, not just that, but the director, Stefen Fangmeier, he has directed one film in his entire life, Eragon. Do you know what he has oodles of experience in?
Special effects.
Special effects work. He is a special effects legend. Let me just tell you, let me run off some credits for you. Okay?
Let's hear him.
Terminator 2.
Okay.
Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Saving Private Ryan.
Alrighty.
Signs. Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. Great special effect. A type of movie I think our audience would respond to. The Bourne Identity. And all of this on top of 21 episodes of Game of Thrones.
Okay. And I think that is very much worth just saying great job. The Urgals! He couldn't have made the Urgals at least have horns?
I think his area of expertise is not necessarily on, like, humanoid creatures. Maybe. I mean, he's
the Bourne
clearly super talented.
If he's doing the Bourne trilogy...
I think he just did the first one. But,
well, still, the Bourne movie.
But just, like, special effects, especially digital special effects. Like, Jurassic Park. That's like... a huge landmark in the progression of CGI and digital effects. So I think it goes without saying that the digital effects in this movie are kind of fantastic.
Yeah, I think they are. Like, and we'll get more into it when we do our dragon wrap up.
Yes, that's at the end.
That's at the end.
Okay, where are we in the plot?
Literally 2 minutes in.
Okay, let's fast track it. What's happening?
So Durza is sent by Galbatorix to ambush Arya to get the stone, which we all know is an egg.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Like, again, I hate that. Just if you're going to show Galbatorix, show it as it. Okay, I know there's so much to cover, but I just have one last thing.
The prologue, because Galbatorix is shown in the prologue.
Yes, if you're going to do like the books made a very special effort to give you no description of what Galbatorix was like until Eragon came into the throne room to fight. Spoiler alert! To fight Galbatorix, and then you find out. They could have totally Fire Lord Ozai'd this guy and just like
I wanted him like the Emperor from Star Wars. Lean in, because I don't think he's at all in the first Star Wars film, and I think you get like a glimpse of him in Empire Strikes Back.
Yes,
and then when he actually is revealed at the beginning of Return of the Jedi, it's like, holy shit, this is Darth Vader's boss.
Yes,
like just let Durza be the big bad for this.
Yeah, one. Like, again, nothing against John Malkovich.
I have something against John Malkovich. I think he's all wrong for this role. I think he is terrible.
The fit, though. The fit that he had. He rocked the fit.
But his throne room set.
It's terrible.
It's pretty weak. It's kind of evoking the kind of thing you would see in, like, films of an era past, which I like.
Yes.
But I hate the map. That they just have that like tacky ass map of the land that's like weirdly just off to the side of his throne. Like, I feel like he can't even like see it from his throne. It'd be like a weird perspective. And then at the end of the movie, he like chops through it in a really corny way. I'm with you. He should have just been omitted or like dressed in shadow.
Yes.
For all of his scenes. I also think John Malkovich is a great actor, so I will pay him respect there. He doesn't feel right for this role to me because it's just his tone of voice more than anything. And in his scenes, he also feels like he received next to no direction.
Yes. I did enjoy how he loomed over Durza, though. I don't know if you noticed that, but he like very much was like an ominous figure over Durza. And maybe that had more to do with Robert Carlyle?
Yeah, Robert Carlyle.
Yeah, that may have been more of his performance, but John Malkovich just did a great job of just seeming like he is Durza's boss. But again, I think we can both agree.
That's more a function of the set being built, so it's like he's like atop his throne there. I think that's smart filmmaking.
But the thing is, like, even when he was like, because there's one scene in particular where he's like walking, like approaching him, and Durza's like backing up against the wall, and he's like looming down with his own fingernail, and he's like,
he's got the finger guns out. Oh no! But I can look. I think Robert Carlyle's kind of a tiny dude. So
he probably is.
I could look that up.
But I think that just added emphasis to Galbatorix. But again, Galbatorix sends Durza to go get
in the prologue. They have the one shot of Galbatorix again in front of his map there, like trying to look imposing. I think it looks so stupid, and they cut to it twice in the prologue. It's the same shot twice.
I noticed that they reuse shots, like because they reuse a shot of the farmhouse in Carvajal twice because you can see the horse flicking its tail in the same exact way that's out there. But
Robert Carlyle, 5'8". So not tiny, but
John Malkovich is taller.
It would seem. I'll get him.
I suffer without my stone. Do not prolong my suffering.
That sounds like a studio executive note. They're like, wrap it up, keep it going.
And
hurry it up.
Chop, chop, chop.
Hour 45. It's what the people want.
I want to be on lunch in 20. No, but so yeah, Arya gets ambushed and a chase ensues. Durza's chasing after Arya.
And then she does some magic to send the stone, which looks like a jelly bean.
It does. I made specific note that it looks like a jelly bean.
It's a big blue jelly bean.
It's a stale jelly bean because it goes ahead and knocks on it.
I like the coloring of it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful color.
It pops out in every scene. I think that's a smart choice.
Yes.
I just want to eat it.
We're going to clip that.
Tell me I'm wrong.
But something I did think was just absolutely, because mirroring what's going on, Eragon is currently hunting in the spine right now, and he finds a doe that he's gonna hunt after, and right when the egg appears, the deer just sort of trots off and away, like it runs away, but it's like not sprinting at all. I'm just like, you could have like shot a gun or something to make it like go bolting off. Like what are you doing?
I don't know. Maybe it was a practical deer?
It looked like it.
Fangmeier, my dude, CGI it for just the one shot of it running away. It's the one thing you're great at.
I think again they put all their money into the Razak, into the dragons, into some of the castles, not enough into the.
Yeah. Okay.
But Eragon brings the egg back to town.
Yes, and his immediate impulse
is to sell it.
Sell it!
Get some cash off of this.
And he takes it to my favorite character in the film. The butcher.
Steven Spears.
Yes, Steven Spears. Did you recognize him?
No.
He's in a very small role in a shared favorite of ours.
Do tell.
He's in Dead Man's Chest.
Is he real? Who is he in Dead Man's Chest?
He's one of the crew members on the ship that Elizabeth stows away on.
Oh my gosh, he is!
Right?
I just cued in. That is him.
This is a better performance, though. 'Cause he is making such a meal of this tiny little scene where he's like licking his lips and like. I love it. I loved everything he was doing in this scene.
I will say this: Jeremy Irons is Brom. Steve Spears is Sloane. Like Sloane becomes like a pretty decent sized character in the books, and Steve Spears, I think he must be a book reader because he embodied Sloane and so.
This is the real reason I'm lamenting we didn't get the trilogy. Because then I could just, when I'm having a hard day, I think the world would just be a little brighter if after a long day of work I could come home and YouTube just all of his scenes. All of the scenery chewing, all of the nonsense. Instead, he got 1.5 scenes, and he's great in it, but alas.
Yeah. And I will say this, it's funny because Eragon tells him that the egg is from the spine, and somehow he automatically knows that this belongs to the king, like right away. I'm like, okay. Like, because there's more practical reasons in the book.
Right, because all this is they have this scene to set up the fact that later the Razak are going to be searching for him so that they can set up Sloane to be a stepping stone for them to be closing in on Eragon.
Yeah, you got to be the snitch.
That's his half scene that comes later.
Yes.
But then Eragon goes home. He goes home, yeah. And he has a little tussle with his cousin.
Yes.
And speaking of Pirates of the Caribbean,
is he in it too?
No, but okay. This scene to me it's just evoking that first scene between Will and Jack in Curse of the Black Pearl.
Yeah, like
It's nailing it again. It's kind of silly in the whole like ha 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 ha, you're my brother, we are like The Room, Tommy Wiseau. But so that's just my thing. Like, it's not an original film, but it's ripping off the stuff it's ripping off pretty well.
Yes, I agree. I think it does a really good job, and I also think that it just demonstrates a lot. Like, I think this was one of his better I don't think I liked him as much as you liked Ed's.
So what it is, because he's not great in it.
No,
he's not. But it is an enormous task to try and helm something of this size. It's like given our history as a podcast, it's something that I gave Millie Alcock so much credit for being able to do that. And she's a little older than Spielers was. He was 18 when this movie came out, which means he was probably like 17 when they were making it. And I think that's a mistake. I think they should have tried to find like an Andrew Garfield that can play younger more convincingly.
I think so.
But on the on when we're looking at these performances, so it's the canon of like Mark Hamill in Star Wars or Elijah Wood in Lord of the Rings. Neither of them are like superb in those, but they're fine. Like, they don't fumble the ball, and it's just the movie around them is so much better.
Yes.
So I do not mark that much of this movie's failure up to Spielers.
I will. The only pushback, I agree with most of what you're saying, but the devil's advocate, the movie's called Eragon. He is literally the center focus. While, yes, Frodo is the main character, Luke Skywalker is the main character, you have amazing characters around him that you can get attached to. And it's not Frodo and the Lord of the Rings. It's not Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. They're trying to emphasize the story around it. While Eragon, it's Eragon. And
at the same time, though, I'm not sure that's his fault. I think I think the real disservice is how they fast track what would have been all his character development, like raising and growing with Saphira.
Yes.
But we're not quite there yet.
No, we're not. Because we see that closeness, and you do see that level. And again, we discussed it earlier, but Roran's right after, like literally not. I don't even think we see Roran for like 2 minutes.
I think it's 3 scenes.
It's literally like the scene of them wrestling, and then he's like, Eragon, I'm leaving.
Right, because we get a sense as Eragon's walking into town that the recruiters for Galbatorix's army are a little eager. And it's kind of like, oh, you're old enough. Oh, you're coming off to serve the army. So Roran sees that that's up on the horizon, and he's a draft dodger.
He wants to get out of here.
I don't blame him.
No, I mean, especially with like these guys are straight up assholes. Like the scenes that the Galbatorix's troops are in, like they're all just absolute assholes.
Yeah. But so that's, in a matter of, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes, Roran, they have the little tussle. He tells him that he's leaving. He does leave, and he's not in the rest of the movie.
Nope.
That's it.
He's gone.
So I assume that he comes back in the books. He probably would have been in later installments.
He's my favorite character in book 2, but that's neither.
That's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other
Did you notice as he's leaving, he's walking away with Eragon, he's just wearing blue jeans. I'll put this graphic up on YouTube. Dude's just wearing blue jeans. They do a really good job for the majority of this movie, like keeping the illusion. You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. Here.
The illusion of a fantasy realm. But in these few shots, and maybe up close it looks better, but I had to pause it. I'm like, who fucked up? Who goofed?
Well, it also, just along, Eragon is supposed to be a poor farm boy. Like, his leather vest looks so nice.
And that haircut.
And that hair, he doesn't give off poor farm boy vibes at all.
No, but he does have protagonist energy, which I think that is more important to establish.
It is, but again, the guy's a special effects genius. You'd think that he would be able to be like, let's rough him up a little bit. Let's give him a sackcloth shirt.
Yeah, or just I think that's a missed opportunity that you put him in some baggy, tattered clothes to start off.
Yeah.
And then when he, gets into the shiny armor later on, maybe that's more of a moment.
Well, and that's even a big thing in the. I can't stay away from the books. I can't.
This is your role in this podcast. I feel like we're so well suited. You having revisited it more recently, and me with a bit more of the film by itself perspective.
Eragon has several moments that he does, he does with Arya when he puts on the armor for the first time, where he's like, I was just a farm boy a year ago, and now I am wearing jewels, I am wearing the finest of silks and linens, and I am communicating with kings, princesses, and lords. What the fuck is going on here? That's very much something that is continuously going through his head, and it's an inferiority complex that he's continuously having. And
they do go for that in this movie, though.
But I think they could have done a better job of it.
I actually think that scene is pretty effective.
It is effective, but...
And can we just do that one right now?
No, let's just do it.
Okay.
Let's go there.
Because later in the film, they put him up in this shiny armor.
Badass looking armor.
It is badass, but he also looks uncomfortable in it. And I feel like this is a miscritique that perhaps some audiences have had, where it's he looks stupid. And no, it's in the scene, he is actually expressing insecurity and a feeling of imposter syndrome about his own circumstances. So I actually think it's a pretty significant character moment that they pull off pretty nicely.
For sure. I completely agree with that. I just wish that would have been reflected more, rather than having him be this clean-cut, clean characters throughout the film.
It would hit even harder if there was more contrast.
Yes.
From the beginning to that point.
Even if he came in with that perfect haircut when he had the armor on, give him a bad, give him a shaggy look, have dirt on his face. He's a farmer.
Anyway, so Roran's gone, peaced out. What's up next?
The stone. it's shaking.
Oh my.
It's quaking.
What could it be?
And pops out a little baby dragon.
Excellent. Not a stone.
Not a jelly bean.
An egg.
Not a stone. An egg. And I actually really like the baby dragon.
The baby dragon is awesome. It looks really good. Yeah. I like that it's fuzzy.
Yeah.
And maybe this is, like, I'll save some of this for our discussion at the end, but it looks good. It's cute. It has real energy.
Yeah.
And as far as the differences between the book and the movie, I think the greatest sin, the greatest problem, the greatest blunder that they made in deviating is that they fast-tracked this part of the story.
Yes.
Where this thing is so cute, and this is the point where you make us care about these characters and their relationship with each other.
Yes.
And instead, it's like, again, like with Roran, it's a matter of like 5 minutes, and then Saphira flies into the sun and is basically a full-grown dragon.
And I hate that about it so much, because they could have done like cut scenes. Like, it could have been a whole montage. Like, they could have done like a 30-second montage scene of like Eragon working with Saphira, making it so she can fly, working with Saphira, teaching her how to hunt, and just slowly, progressively getting larger and larger. But instead, and even in the books, they keep emphasizing that you do not want to use magic to grow or enhance people, because you're giving creatures strength and knowledge that their bodies are not, they don't know how to handle it. It's like putting somebody, a baby's mind into the body of an adult. They just don't know what to do with it.
Poor things.
Yeah.
And just, not to harp on it too much, but just a little more. This movie is aiming for like a fun time for the whole family. I think that movie, that 15, 20 minutes of Eragon, like the farm boy with the dragon in the shed, and like, the dragon ate the neighbor's goat.
Oops, a hell bale caught on fire.
I think that movie would be infinitely more entertaining than all of the action that we end up getting.
And baby Saphira could have been the prototype for baby Yoda. I think like
I do not think they sold very many plushies, but
they could
they'd have committed.
They could have.
Totally.
Like, missed opportunities all around. But before we go too much into the actual, like, there is a scene I just want to at least touch on.
Yeah,
where,
we haven't even really talked about Brom.
Well, that's the thing. Like, Eragon goes, well, we do meet Brom, and Brom apparently stole some chickens. And I actually never caught on, because Brom tells the story about how the chickens, he's like, the chickens were just there, and then they dropped dead just randomly, and I couldn't leave them there.
It's funny.
It's funny, but I finally clued in. He could have used magic to kill those chickens. Like, I don't think I ever cued in before. If he's telling the exact truth of what happened.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're getting at.
Like, he's like, oh, yeah, they were just walking around fine and then fall over dead. Like, what am I to do? And then, of course, the Galbatorix troops take the chickens.
Yeah, not a critical scene, but we're introduced to the character.
And he's
a bit of a troublemaker.
He's a little bit of a rebel. And then we meet, then Eragon goes to what seems to be the bar, and so again, they try to touch on it in this movie, but in the books, Brom is the town storyteller. He knows all the legends, he knows all the stories, and that's what he's known for. And he's oftentimes telling stories. And Jeremy Irons does a good job. I just don't think the people around him are doing a good job. Like,
he doesn't have the time.
He doesn't have the time. But he is explaining like how things used to be different when Galbatorix wasn't king.
So this scene is fine. And again, any scene with Jeremy Irons in it is like a good scene, yes, more or less. Like, on a fundamental level, he elevates this film. The way they portray it in the film, it's represented that the hatching of Saphira's egg is like a disturbance in the Force.
Yes.
And all of the I'm going to say magic sensitive characters seem aware of the fact that this has happened.
Yes.
So Brom talking about this seems to be him like running up a flag of like, because he's like kind of winking at Eragon as he does it. That's like, the dragon riders are coming again.
Yes.
They will have that. But how does he know that Eragon is the one with the drag? In fact, he doesn't know, because it seems like a revelation later.
I will say this. Maybe because he got the cue that it's going to happen. And he's like, guys, you're not going to believe you're not going to believe what I just found out on Magic Twitter. I've got the documents I can't share with you.
This is the 6th time he's made this speech to this day.
I think that's really what it is. It's not that he's winking and nodding at Eragon, but we also spoiler alert. You have been warned. If you have, for whatever reason, not finished the inheritance cycle, turn it off now.
No, don't turn it off.
Well,
just 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Brom is Eragon's father. So Brom is supposed to have like this fatherly love and care. And he's probably looking at Eragon and he's like, hey, there is hope on the horizon. Something change is coming. Like
that's what it is. But we don't get that in this movie.
No. But
again, it's the fact that it's the first installment in a trilogy that didn't happen, weighing this movie down.
Yes.
Okay, but a little bit more time. They sort of fast track. Saphira's a little bigger, and Eragon like takes her out into a field and like lifts her into the air, and she starts flying away. I actually love his reaction to this, where he's like, "Oh, is that it?"
It's like, I did not think this through.
Yeah, it's like you wanted to get money for your big ass jelly bean. You know how much dough you could get for a baby dragon?
More than a king cut, I can tell you that much.
Yeah. But then she does. I think they're going for kind of like a Superman thing, where she like flies up and like there's like a big flash. It actually kind of looks cool for how stupid it is.
Yeah.
And then she comes back and she's big, and she can communicate telepathic. She's learned the entire English language from the sun.
Here's my. Do we want to talk about Saphira's voice now or talk about Saphira's voice later?
This is the time, I think.
I hate it.
You hate it?
I hate Saphira's voice. And hear me out. I think I just got so used, because I've read the Eragon books. I've listened to the Eragon books.
How many times have you seen the movie? Confession time, Bryce.
Thing is, I watched it quite often when I was younger. Like, I watched it quite often when I was younger. But I probably have seen it now a total of like 6 times.
Okay. I mean, you're a rewatcher, so that number isn't insanely high. This was my 3rd watch. I saw it 2 times as a child and strongly disliked it both times.
For the people that are curious, I've watched Attack on Titan more in the past 2 years than I've seen Eragon.
Okay, how many times have you watched Attack on Titan?
Oh, geez. All the way through, or like each installment? Because
all the way through.
All the way through? Like 5 times. But
okay, you keep talking. I'm going to run some numbers here.
Okay. But for me, Saphira's voice is just too human. She's a dragon. There should be a level of gravelness. Like the book Saphira, like for the audiobooks, I feel like they do a really good job at. Saphira's voice is clearly not anything that's human or humanoid. But then when you hear the voices of other dragons, you can tell that those dragons are clearly male dragons, while Saphira is clearly female. But at the same time, it's not this sing-song, almost elf-like voice. And I think personally, I want something more gravelly. I want something to show that she is technically a monster. Like,
I hear you. I think that's a tough sell to a studio. I would love if there was a little bit more personality in it. I'm coming more from a place of it's fine, and the whole like telepathic communication thing that they have is kind of tricky.
Ed Spielers. Is it Spielers?
Spielers.
He looks constipated each time he's talking to her.
Because that's the tricky thing. That it's like you have to like. It's like, okay, you're acting like you're saying this in your mind.
Yes.
And what it does for the story, I like their telepathic communication.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
Yeah.
It doesn't read as well in the film as it does in a novel.
I feel like the actor of Jim would have done a great job.
What's his name?
John
Krasinski.
Yeah, John Krasinski. He does a great job at communicating.
It may be his best suit.
Yeah, I think that he would have been able to sell that quite well. But
all right, are you ready for this?
Let's hear it.
Okay, I have just come up with this bit on the fly. Okay, I got to get the total length for the Eragon film. I know we've hinted at it, but the actual length is 1 hour and 44 minutes.
Gotcha.
Very tight for a fantasy epic film.
Very tight.
So that comes out to 104 minutes.
Okay.
Meaning that if Bryce had committed the time he has spent watching Attack on Titan instead to watching Eragon, he could have watched it 24 more times. You tell me what would have been the right thing to do.
I really don't know.
Those are rough figures. I just average episode length of Attack on Titan, and I'm counting the final 2 episodes as doubles. What were we talking about?
Saphira's voice.
Yeah. I don't know if it's Rachel Weisz's fault.
No.
Either. She's a good actress.
I really don't think it is her fault. It's just I really wish they would have run her voice through some sort of bass filter, or even just something to make it just seem more,
like, give it more presence.
Yes,
somehow.
Exactly. Like, give it almost the, like, I like to think thunder, like something.
Well, I mean, as long as we're going down this path, like the cinephile, like, art house fiend in me would love if we could just have this, like, totally out there, like, cerebral adaptation of Eragon. That's I don't know who could make that. I don't want to say David Lynch, because that would look like the first Dune movie.
What do you have against that?
Sorry, I'm getting off track. I'm just like hypotheticals and like fantasy land, but I'm with you on the voice. I wish it was more. I wish they'd taken a bigger swing with it, but from my experience, I think it's fine. I
mean, again, that was really my biggest critique of Saphira. I don't really have that many more critiques, and we'll get more into that.
Overall, the CGI rendering looks really good.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But this sort of bleeds into, like, Eragon goes and talks to Brom a little bit, but
I like his little dragon book.
I love it. It does not fit the scene at all. Like,
no, but it looks cool.
I need that. I need the book.
Yeah.
Jeremy Irons, if you still have the book.
We're gonna run out of table space so fast in this podcast.
We're gonna get shelves, Austin.
That's just time to upgrade.
Exactly. But that bleeds into. Is there anything else that you really want to?
No. Let's keep going.
So, you hear screams, you hear breaking as Eragon is walking back, and we do see the Razak, because we do get a scene of Durza summoning the Razak.
The Nazgul.
The Nazgul.
They're the Nazgul stand-ins.
Yes. And this might be a little controversial to the book readers. I don't mind how they ended up looking. The Razak.
What's the difference? So I liked them too. I thought they were cool and scary and like kind of creepy.
So the biggest thing in the books is they're very cloaked up in like Nazgul-esque robes, and you can't see their face because they have a long beak, almost like a bird.
Oh.
And like they talk in like clicks and like whistles.
This is coming back to me. Yeah.
And because they are bug-like, and I actually do enjoy like how they're just covered in bugs and stuff like that. but they are bug-like where they have like giant bulbous eyes without any pupils. And
I don't think that really would have played in a PG movie.
no. And again, I don't mind it. I actually really, because they have the whole Assassin's Creed like knives coming out.
Totally.
And I think.
Plus, if you put them in robes, then that's just overtly the Nazgul.
Yes. And again, like as far as things that differentiated from the books, I don't mind it. Like, I feel like, and especially because in the books, they were more of like gathering information. This, they're strictly like, okay, we're going in, we're fucking shit up, we're torturing people.
Yeah.
And I think they did a good job at what they were doing there.
Yeah, and that's more credit to the effects department in that one, because again, it's like so little time for them to be able to make an impact. You're like, you see that and you're like, evil, horrible, and dangerous. It all reads in an instant.
Yes.
Also, the scene of Durza summoning them is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. Like, Durza's a fun character.
He is, and you want to just do Durza now?
I feel like if we want to do Durza now.
Yeah, okay. So Robert Carlyle is a really good actor.
Yeah.
If anybody knows him from anything, it's probably from Train Spotting, where he's very good.
Not Once Upon a Time.
Sure. So I don't know what that is, but honestly, with our audience, that sounds like it'd be maybe a little bit more seen.
He's Rumpelstiltskin.
Oh my goodness!
And he is amazing as Rumpelstiltskin.
Great. I mean, he's consistently good.
Yes.
And to his credit, I did see that there was some criticism from critics at the time of this film's release that the actors weren't, like the more seasoned actors weren't taking the film seriously. I don't get any of that from him.
No.
And honestly, none of it from Irons. I do get it from Malkovich.
Yes. Malkovich, I definitely got that from. And just characters in the later parts of the show, I got it from as well.
Yeah, when they get to the Varden.
Yeah.
Totally. They're so checked out, everybody there.
They're like, they're done with this.
But Robert Carlyle, he's a good actor.
Yeah.
And I think because in Train Spotting, which was probably his like breakout role, where he plays, it's a movie about crazy heroin addicts. And he's like the worst of them.
I think he's a good villain. I think
but that's what I'm saying. Like from there, everyone's like, he is a villain, and that is what he can do, and he can do the crazy like loose cannon type guy. I'm not like, maybe that's the career he wanted, or maybe that's just what he's been pigeonholed into. I think his performance is pretty good. I don't really feel like he has the presence this character demands.
I feel like that has more to do with the effects. I feel because Durza's not a imposing figure like physically in the books. It's more that he's a shade. Shades can, again, they go into detail. We'll cover it more in depth, but you use your actual energy to cast spells, and shades almost have an unlimited amount of that energy to cast spells. So I feel like they should have done something more to like give off, like they should have had like his scars be glowing, or they should have had like, I feel like that has more to do with.
See, that's what I'm getting at, is that I think the core performance that he's giving should have been enough if they'd have supported it with something like that. Like, again, the R-rated version of this exact performance, like with just like all out ridiculous, like horns, like dark magic, red eyes, like the full
magic.
9 yards with the makeup and the special effects, could have been fantastic.
Yes.
Could have been like in the conversation as one of the great like fantasy film villains.
Yes.
But he's like the Urgals, he's just kind of a guy.
Yeah.
And I do like the progression of his makeup, where as Galbatorix is like pushing him more and more, and he's doing like more dark magic, he gets like more messed up as the movie goes along.
He looks like the mouth of Sauron at the end.
A little bit, and I liked that.
Yeah, I did too. I liked
that, but I low-key wish that that's where he'd started,
yes.
and that by the end he'd just been like this unrecognizable monster.
Yes.
That's Again, that's the PG of it all getting in the way.
No, I agree.
But we agree that it's a good performance.
It's a good performance. I honestly...
A earnest, unself-conscious performance, which is like the best thing.
Second favorite performance in the movie.
Well, it have to be after Irons.
Oh, of course, after Irons.
And I mean, Spears is just in a whole conversation of his own.
He had the best breakout performance. But Eragon goes ahead and starts running home, and Saphira stops him and like is trying to stop him from going home.
And this is the first of two major dragon ride sequences that we get in the film,
yes,
which are, in my opinion, excellent.
Yes, they're fun. They're excellent. I understand why. Time constraints. But in the books, this ride fucked Eragon up. Like, his legs got chafed up, rubbed raw because the scales like completely rubbed all the skin off of him. Saphira like took him to a remote location and refused to take him to the farm until like a couple days later. Like, it wasn't just like flying above the farm for what seems to be like 10 minutes before getting thrown into a hay bale.
But there's some legitimate viscerality in this scene where I like that he's getting tossed all over and like he's trying to like get on her back, but then like all that he can end up doing is trying to keep holding on.
And I think that it's
more on that later.
I think that that's it shows how they develop in their relationship, and I feel like that they were really trying to show that emphasis of like, this is their first ride. Their second ride, once we get to it, there's improvements but still struggling, but then at the end of the movie
they're in sync. They're Skuvlakas
Sven.
Yeah, but for this scene, I liked how tactile it was.
Yeah.
It never broke the illusion of it. Like, you could feel the speed, you could feel the height.
Yeah.
Spleer's performance is sufficient, I think. I think that as far as like thrilling effects, this and the next big flying scene is the best this film has to offer.
I want to just put something with Spleers. When it comes to just regular conversations, I feel like that's his weaker spot. When it comes to these more intense moments, I feel like he does a really good job, or at least a good job. Because there's a few times I'm like, it's a little cringy, like when he's like having conversations.
Yeah, I just have to keep remembering he's 17.
I know.
Which is no excuse, but it's like you factor that in and you're like, yeah, this is fine. This is better than we could have hoped for.
That true. Fair. But we do get back to the farm.
Yeah, but tragedy. Shocker, as we already covered. Garrow is dead. His uncle.
Yeah. Uncle Garrow has been killed by the Razak. And Eragon is like, it's your fault!
To Brom.
No,
to Saphira. Yeah. Which, I do wish that they had subverted the like whiny teen bit of this a little more.
Yes, I'll just do a little pushback. In the books, Eragon does blame Saphira, but he doesn't send her away. I think that they could have got...
Sure. And I do appreciate that the element, like the push and pull in their relationship is preserved, admittedly to a lesser degree, but it is in this film. And I like that they legitimately do have a relationship that's like kind of rocky, but in the end it gets somewhere and they come together and they're stronger for it.
Yes. And so he does send her away, and it seems like not even a minute later, Brom shows up.
Yeah, asking, where's your dragon?
Well, he first notices the Gedwëy ignasia on his...
Right, because we did gloss over that when the egg hatches, Saphira like imprints on Eragon, where he has this like little spiral thing on his hand. So,
and it's just supposed to represent the first spot where a rider touches their dragon, like, and that's where they like imprint.
Not in this movie because they have it in the same exact spot.
I mean, it makes logical sense almost, like that being the spot you first touch your dragon. Like if it's like a dog, you're going right there to pet. Like,
yeah, but Brom knew that that was going to happen, right? So to me, it would be like, why would you want that in like an obvious spot? Wouldn't you want like to be able to conceal the fact you're a dragon rider?
I mean, so when Brom was a rider, it was like a point of honor. Like it was like you were the top dog. So it was almost like you were flashing.
People are like leaning their forehead to touch their dragon for the time.
Exactly. And so it's not necessarily, I feel like they made an emphasis that a lot of dragon riders did have the Gedwëy ignasia on their hand, especially because that seemed to be like where they channeled their spells and everything.
Okay, so. I was totally wrong. That is not a flaw. This is a perfect film.
It's corny that it's
carry on.
It's corny that it's shaped as an E. Like,
E for Eragon.
Which I feel so dumb that I just realized Eragon is dragon, but instead of a D, it's an E.
It's also Aragorn from Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Can you get more obvious?
Again, it's Christopher Paolini being a 16-year-old writing his fantasy novel. Which, Chris, if you're listening to this, big fan of your work.
You have brought us both much joy.
Much joy. So they leave. Brom lights the barn on fire, and
then we're to our riding scenes, right?
Yeah, they're riding.
It's the Lord of the Rings thing. It's the travel montage with the great vistas, the aerials.
Yeah.
They look fantastic.
They look good.
Great locations.
Yeah. Again, shout out to Hungary, Slovakia, and Canada.
Shout out to the countries. Real MVPs of this film.
They are.
Do they get? Oh, they do a little training. Well, Saphira comes back.
Yeah, it's shocker. Saphira, like Eragon, they make up, and they do some training mainly because Eragon, Durza sends the Urgals out to hunt for Eragon, and Eragon and Brom can hear and do see these Urgals like attacking and killing travelers, and Brom's like, we gotta be a little stealthy about this, and Eragon's like, let's take him. We can take him. I can fight.
Right. And then, so Brom's like, really? No, let's find it. That's not at all what I don't think I can do what Jeremy Irons. Life's not fair. He's like, really? Let's find out, boy.
It's not going to be your cousin saving you this time, either.
And they have a fun little sparring bit.
He kicks his ass.
Eragon gets his ass kicked.
Yeah. Which is fun.
And it's also fun that he's later telepathically talking with Saphira, which I like that Brom can't hear their conversation. And he's like, I just didn't want to hurt the old man.
She's like, right. Right. Which, that bleeds into Brom doing something, a little something. He casts a little magic.
Brazinger.
And catches Eragon's interest.
And they talk about magic a little bit.
Not at this point.
Yeah, no, sorry, my bad. That's after.
They got to go to Daret.
Yes, but that's next.
That is next. They go to Daret. I love how Daret looks, to be honest.
It looks good.
Like, it's got that swampy city little feel where it's on top of the water. The mist is everywhere.
Some shady characters about.
Great location for a fortune teller.
Yes. And she is blinged out.
I will say this. If I had no idea how Angela was in the books, I would not have a problem with Angela's character. This is not how Angela is in the books at all.
All right. Air it out.
Angela in the books is like sassy. She's she's like a crazy cat lady mixed with a crazy crystal lady mixed with just somebody who's been just an angry lady in general. Like she's really sassy. She's really fun. And when she does do her fortune tellers, like, yeah, she takes it seriously, but there's an air of like, well, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, well, this is very much like crystal ball.
Yeah, it's kind of like fortune teller at the state fair.
Yes.
I honestly don't think it's that memorable of a performance, and I think that this runtime could have probably been better used elsewhere in the film.
Yeah, because literally the only fortune that they tell is that there's battles that are going to be fought around him, and that there's a girl waiting for him. And like,
you could have guessed.
Like, shock. And I love how it's like, there's going to be battles fought over you. He's like, there can't be. Like, really?
Yeah. There's something to be said for Eragon in this movie, like not realizing he's the main character until like the movie's almost over.
But
which is like in theory his arc, but it can be a little like, I can see how that can be off-putting to some audience members watching the film.
He literally has a dragon. He's literally the only person with a dragon.
Yeah, and it's like, no, you are the most special boy, and how about you accept that a little quicker?
Guess what? Not everyone has a dragon.
You know what? Maybe that's why Saphira the dragon hatched for him.
Maybe.
But then they encounter some Urgals out of nowhere.
They just been popping up like daisies.
Yeah. And to fast track it, they're trying to get away, and Eragon, seemingly by instinct, pulls back his bow and yells, "Brazinga!" and then shoots a power-up fireball shot.
He cast a level 5 fireball.
Yeah, out of mana, dude. He's done so because he goes to sleep. But thankfully, he killed all the Urgals in that one mighty stroke, and he wakes up later.
It has a 20-foot radius. Don't you know how this works?
Yeah. Brom wakes him up later, and this is where they have a conversation about magic.
Yeah. They break down that magic comes from the ancient language, which is the language of the elves. Every word has a word in the ancient language, and when you know the word, you know the thing, and you have control and power over it.
Now, I would like to discuss this in the book, because for my money, Eragon has the inheritance cycle has the cleanest magic system I have ever encountered, and I love it.
I genuinely love their magic system. I've heard people talk smack on it, and I'm just like, how can you, like, it makes sense. For me, like, it makes the most sense. There's an entire language dedicated towards the spells. Like,
well, it's just the mechanics of it, if I may, because this isn't necessarily explained in the films, and you can fill this in a little bit for me because I'm operating from old memories.
No, go ahead.
But as I recall, the Elvish language in this universe, when you're speaking that language, it is impossible to lie.
Correct.
Therefore, if you say something in the Elvish language, it will come to be. But this requires the energy from you that it would take for you to make that happen. So there's like a law of equivalent exchange. So you can't, like if you were to say, pick up that log, and you said in Elvish, move that log 20 feet. You would feel as exhausted, like it would take as much effort from you as if you had physically stood up and gone and done it.
Yes.
Therefore, like if you were to just like say a magic thing like lift up the Empire State Building, like your body does not physically have that strength within it to do it, so you would die.
Correct.
And okay, what was that? 20 seconds? I wish the movie had bothered to outline that just in a little bit more detail, because I think that's so airtight. And they just kind of brush it off as, oh yeah, it takes energy from you to do spells. So don't get carried away with it.
No, and I don't understand why they didn't give that the attention that it deserved to do that, but I don't know.
Maybe they felt they were simplifying it because this is a movie. What's their target audience here? 9?
Probably.
Which was my age.
Thing is, we were reading the books though back then, and like I feel like having a pretty decent understanding of the books back then.
Anyway, it's one of my favorite things for my memory of the books about it. And later in the series, they introduced like you have the ability to like save energy in certain objects. So like if you do that and like you're consistent with it over time, you can do like great feats with magic. But again, you have to be careful not to run out. It's a great magic system.
Hats off to Christopher Paolini.
So Eragon learns a few vocab words from Brom here that might come in handy later.
Maybe, just maybe.
But what happens next?
Well, Brom encourages Eragon to go on a little flight.
Oh, yes. So this is flight 2.
Yes.
Because he's like, we'd move a lot faster if you were on your dragon.
Yes.
I'm working on my impression. This is just getting worse.
And when you feel like you're one with your dragon, you can learn Skuvlakas Ven.
Now, this is the Skuvlakas Ven thing. How do we feel about it? I want you to go first.
I think it's because it's not exactly what it's not in the books what it is. It is, but it isn't. But that's the thing is in the book, you can just say it's like Eragon saw as he'd never seen before. And that's kind of where they leave it. Well, it's more like Eragon can like mold his mind with Saphira and just see everything out of Saphira's eyes. It's not an actual spell. So, but I also get that that's pretty hard to like.
Yes, but it's not, I don't hate it. In this instance, later in the film, it ends up looking like a video game power-up where it like highlights all the baddies.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, I'm going Skuvlakas Ven. Locked on. But here, it's like they kind of just throw on some more like generic, like warpy psychedelic effects. And you're like, okay, this seems like a moment where they could have taken the medium of film and like really filled in and like put their stamp on what this is.
Well, because in the books, it does specifically say that Eragon, when he sees out of Saphira's eyes, blues are a lot more prominent while reds and greens are a lot dimmer, which seems to be the opposite.
No, I think they just took that saturation slider.
But it's not bad. It's definitely, I don't have a problem with it.
No, and it's the exact same thing that I said about the other flight scene, where I mean, everything that I'm going to say about one applies to the other. The story is a little different here, where they are working as one. He has a saddle now this time, which seems to help a great deal.
A lot.
But yeah, it's as far as like a special effects showcase, excellent.
Yeah.
Totally convincing. You feel the speed of it, the wind in his face, the thrill, the heights. I think it's a great sequence.
It is. I actually enjoyed it, and I do think that Ed Spielers does a good job just relaying like the excitement, some of the feel. Like when he goes, he's like, "Oh, this is not so bad," and it's the clip drop. He's like, "Oh," like
yeah,
like he sold it to me then. Like
and that's also something that I feel like regular people can relate to, because it's just like the roller coaster over the top. Like that was the time in my life when I first saw this movie that I was like first like tall enough to go on the big coaster. And so I was like, oh, that's what that feels like.
Yeah.
So yeah, now we are past the best sequences in the film. Let's carry on. I have nothing to say other than they're very good.
Yep. But that's when the infrared starts kicking in. And
yeah. So it is actually in this first scene, just not initially.
Yeah.
To where you see some. Are they the Razak or
it's the Razak? Yeah.
Yeah. Which they always sound like bionicles to me.
They look like bionicles a little bit.
But he sees those like enemies near. He's like, we gotta help him.
I just want to do a little go back because it's important for this particular scene. Brom explains that he needs to be more careful with Saphira because the reason that they're hunting after Eragon is if they kill Eragon, Saphira will die. A dragon cannot survive without its rider, but a rider can survive without its dragon.
Brilliant.
So
I like what that does in the books more than in the movies, but it does raise the stakes a great deal. To position Eragon, this vulnerable, naive boy, as the Achilles heel of Saphira, the great dragon.
Yes. And so the reason that I bring this up is because Brom is like screaming at Eragon, "Hey, don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. Like, get out of here." And Eragon's like, "We're going to save the day.
Reckless.
Team America coming in."
And they do.
And they do. And one of the Razak is able to like injure Saphira, and like one of the Razak goes to kill Eragon, but he uses some magic. And then the other Razak is dueling Brom.
And this is where we see Zarek.
Zarek is... I love Zarek.
That's another Star Wars parallel. Magic swords. Are you kidding me?
But it works. It works so. I prefer the lore behind the swords than I do behind the lightsabers. That might be controversial to say, where it's you make the sword the color of your dragon. Like, it's... Come on.
Sure. And it looks great.
Great
prop. I think they fulfilled the potential of that in the film.
Yes.
After this encounter, after they like wake up.
Yeah, Brom kills the Razak.
Yeah, he takes him out. Then that's took care of the
big difference from the book.
It's like, okay, so we've cleared the Urgals. Now level 2, the Razak, a little trickier, but got through him. I wonder what's up next.
Check. And Brom and Eragon sort of have an argument about Brom is like, you're being too reckless. You need to take this serious. And sort of out of nowhere, Eragon's like, I figured out his secret. And it's revealed
that he, Brom, was a dragon rider.
Gasp!
Who saw that one coming?
Not me.
And so, yeah, we kind of get Brom's backstory here, which is about a character that we never see.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of setup for stuff that never got filmed.
Yeah. And again, it's just so heartbreaking to me because Brom is not only my favorite character in the movie, but in the books, I loved Brom's character. I love all the lore that's behind Brom's character and everything that's done with Brom. But Brom is, there's just so much potential there, especially the fact that Brom's dragon was named Saphira, and that's why Eragon picked the name Saphira because it sounded like it fit. Oh,
yeah.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
So this is followed by Eragon having a dream about the quote-unquote elf from earlier in the film, Arya.
Yes.
I keep wanting to say Arya.
Arya.
From Game of Thrones, but Arya. What I really keep wanting to say is Arwen. But Carrie, I might as well say Princess Leia.
Except for he is not related to this character.
Well, we didn't see the other films.
Fair.
Which I recently watched the original Star Wars trilogy again, and that is the most ridiculous, like, out of somebody's ass twist that's ever been in any movie ever. But that's another thing.
Is there a dragon in Star Wars, Austin?
No, there's not. There is an episode of The Mandalorian called The Dragon, which is one of the best episodes, I feel. Perhaps that's enough to justify some coverage.
Possibly.
Yeah, so far I haven't found a better end to the Star Wars universe other than what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
But Eragon has this dream about Arya where she's suffering. This comes after. So there's the scene where Durza kills the one Urgal with just a touch.
Just the tip.
Yeah, and he does the classic Darth Vader villain thing of he kills the one. He's like, "You're in charge now."
Congratulations, you've been promoted.
Precisely. And then, so that's revealed. He does his dark magic through his fingernails. He goes and he touches Arya, who's like chained up and like sleeping.
Yeah.
And you see like the darkness spread on her skin. It's kind of a cool effect.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And so this is what is prompting the dream that Eragon has. That it's like Durza's manipulating all of the strings. Forcing her to like call out and ask him to come save her.
Yeah.
And he takes the bait.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, and this poor 18-year-old or younger boy cannot be convinced that it is now his destiny to go save the attractive elf lady in his dream.
She needs me, Brom. You don't understand.
You don't get it.
Brom, she sent me an IM and like really wants me to come. I gotta go. You just don't understand, bro.
And even Saphira's against it.
Yeah.
Which, there's the whole bit where Eragon's like, I'm the rider and I say that we're going. And that didn't really sit right with me, but maybe that's how the dragon rider relationship works.
Yeah, Brom is like completely against it.
He's like, it's in the opposite direction. We're almost there. You can't go back. I'm just accepting that I can't do a Jeremy Irons, and I never will be able to.
Only Jeremy Irons can do Jeremy Irons.
And that's why he's Jeremy Irons.
Exactly.
This is a very abrupt turn in the film, I will say.
It is.
And this whole section is fast-tracked to an uncomfortable degree, I would say.
But moving on to that, I actually really enjoy Gil'ead. Like,
okay, then I'll let you talk about it.
Do you not like Gil'ead?
It's fine.
I thought you'd like, because it almost has like a cult, like everybody in there is either like just in despair, or you're like completely like, we are the part of the Durza cult.
Yes, I guess my issues, and they're not even like strong issues. It's more indifference comes later, where it's like I like the establishing shot, like that we see the fortress. It looks pretty cool. Yeah. And then as he's going in there, it's like you get some evil magic vibes, and that's kind of sweet. But then it I don't know, the whole thing feels just kind of small in how few players there are in the following sequences.
I took that more as like it's clearly a trap. Like there's nobody in the fortress because Eragon needs to be able to find Arya. And once he does find Arya, then Durza's like, haha, surprise, motherfucker.
Yes, and that's the other issue. Is not only does Eragon not realize that he's a protagonist, he doesn't realize he's in a video game. And that's part of the fun of playing a video game, is that you know that when you show up and there's the save point and the max health chest,
yep,
and the max mana chest, you're about to have a boss fight.
And he just did not cue in on any of those things. No. And from the looks of it, like, I also sort of love how he like automatically knows how to like unlock doors now, and like
it's by instinct, bro.
That's fair.
The dragon magic runs in his blood deep.
But Arya is like, Eragon,
you shouldn't have come. And he's like, what are you talking about, babe?
Babe, I'm here to save you.
Oh, I did want to note, I thought it was kind of interesting. So we've already established that I'm getting the precise details here, that Spaliers was like 17 when they were filming this. So he was 18 at release. The actor who portrays Arya, Sienna Gullery, was 31. And I'm not saying that like an age gap relationship of that span is like off limits, especially with consenting adults. It's just a little unusual that they're sort of positioning this as a romantic relationship.
Again, I'm not supporting this in real life, but it's sort of ironic though, because Arya in the books is like over 200 years old and Eragon is like 17 years old.
So does it progress to a romantic relationship in the book?
Spoiler alerts. Yes and no. Like Arya feels like she can't have a relationship with Eragon because she doesn't want to take away his focus from his ultimate goal of killing the king, because she feels like, and also there's the age, there's been stories and legends of elves and humans, and it's always ended in tragedy. And
so it was like the same thing with my first girlfriend.
It was always destined to.
Been there, dude.
But then at the very end of the book, Eragon has to leave Alagasia, and Arya is named Queen of the Elves. So
she wasn't meant to be.
It's not meant to be. But they had a very romantic dinner. Arya becomes a dragon rider. The dragons have a very romantic. And so like it definitely is like, it comes to the head of where like, yes, they are romantically involved, but they're like, we've got to go our separate ways.
But they can't. So it's basically the stretched out, more fleshed out version of what happens in this film.
Exactly.
And she's fine in this. Not that memorable to me.
She did have black hair.
And just all observations stopped after that for Bryce. But this is where he has his first battle.
First magic battle.
Yeah, first magic battle, if you want to call it that, with Durza. And some of the effects in this are kind of cool.
Yeah. Like Durza like sending all the weapons at him.
Yeah, it also and maybe he's supposed to be toying with him, but it also feels like Eragon should have died in an instant.
Yes.
Like it's one of those that it's so preposterous that it eliminates the tension for me.
And this is something that I
clear me up if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not that Galbatorix wants Eragon like the Emperor wants Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. Like Galbatorix just wants Eragon dead.
So in the movie, yes, but in the books, Galbatorix wants Eragon because, again, spoiler alert if you haven't read the Inheritance Cycle, he wants to rebuild the Riders. He wants to make his own Dragon Rider like society. In Saphira, even though there's 3 eggs left, Saphira is the only female known dragon that he knows. So he views Saphira as being the mother of the dragon race. So Galbatorix has specifically said, you cannot kill Eragon. You cannot kill Saphira. You have to bring them to me at whatever cost. So that's something that I really struggled with and didn't like, because Galbatorix is like, kill him.
Yeah, so it's another failure of adaptation where there's like all of these other elements that are still in the story, but then you get here and you're like, well, why didn't he just eviscerate him?
Because he could have. Like, he very much could have killed Eragon.
And not just that, you feel that.
Yes.
In watching the scene, you're like, he's outmatched here.
Yes. Like, it's not even, like, remotely close, which, again, for me, makes more sense that... And even in, like, the book, which doesn't... Again, the book's right there. Just, you could have pulled a few things from there. You could just take it.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's like, why didn't he try... Like, he had Eragon in his grasp. Why did he not try to kill him? And, like, when they were, like, talking to people, they're like, do not kill the Rider. Do not kill the Rider. Like, everybody's, like, getting the message that they cannot kill Eragon. And Eragon's like, huh, that's weird.
I'm the best.
I'm just not going to think about that at all.
So they get to battle in, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Eragon is kind of getting overwhelmed.
Yes.
I mean, things are not going his way, but before Durza can land the final blow,
Jeremy Irons.
Brom leaps in front of the spear, the arrow, and takes it to the chest.
He takes it quite literally to the chest.
Allowing Eragon to get off one shot that lands in Durza's head and apparently makes it so that he needs to
respawn.
Yeah. Nuts. He just wakes up in his
God damn it
tower. It's like 10 miles away. He's like, no.
It's almost like trying to kill a vampire in D&D, where you have to either kill it with running water or sunlight, otherwise it just respawns and like.
Yeah. But Brom, the sacrifice of the mentor.
Yep.
A classic trope.
Yep.
How do we feel about it? Well, I guess I'll just say, like, he doesn't die in that very instance. They, like, get away. Also, there's Murtagh is here.
Murtagh.
Got it. Portrayed by Garrett Hedlund, who I like in general. Yeah. I think he's pretty good in this movie. He doesn't have a lot to do, but he's fine.
I'll just bleed in. I actually really like his portrayal as Murtagh. Like, I feel like he visually looks a lot like what I envision Murtagh to look like in the books. There was a couple weak moments acting-wise, but otherwise...
But part of my issue, it throws me a little bit for a loop, is I like him so much more blonde. Well, he's the Tron Legacy guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't realize that he's the main in Tron.
Yeah. Well, to me, he's the inside Llewyn Davis guy. Very memorable scenes in that film. But that's a very different podcast. Anyway, he's there and he helps them escape with his mad archer skills. And so the 5 of them, if you count Saphira, get out of there, right?
Well, Murtagh doesn't come with them.
No, because he shows up later. Mm-hmm. Right. So the 4 of them get out of there, and then Brom, like, Eragon tries to heal him, but Arya's like, you're not strong enough yet. And I'm like, and you aren't either?
Which, to me, Arya was just put into, like, a coma. Like, she put herself into a coma because Durza did poison her. And it made so much more sense for her to stay in that coma because, again, Arya could have just...
So you're saying in the book at this point she's still like unconscious?
Yes.
Okay, well that would have made sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, they have a bit of a moment, and he
dies a dragon rider's death.
Right. So they let him take a ride on Saphira, and it's kind of a sweet shot.
It is. I enjoyed it.
But how do we feel about all of this?
Just from start to finish?
Brom's sacrifice, as portrayed in the film.
I'll say this, like, compared to the books, because it's a very different situation. It's a similar situation where Brom sacrifices himself for Eragon, but the Razak capture Eragon and Brom. And Murtagh starts attacking the Razak, which allows them to sort of get away, and the Razak are running away, but they try to kill Eragon because they don't give a fuck what Galbatorix says to them, and then Brom jumps in the way and takes the blade. So, to me, like... it's a lot more intense, but if Brom was going to go to Gil'ead, like
that's the actual issue. And I'm not one to dwell on plot holes too much, but Eragon flew there on Saphira.
Yes. And
it's not like he was hanging out a long time before he went into the fortress. So how did Brom get there in time? We'll never know.
They had to wait till nightfall.
Okay. I know. They made a big deal about how far away in the opposite direction it was.
I know. Like, I don't like that plot hole, but
taking the emotion of the scene, if we just ignore all of that, I'm kind of mixed on it. Not less mixed, more indifferent.
I think it just comes down to, like, this is actually one of my more favorite parts of the movie. Like the Gil'ead scene in general, so like it doesn't bother me as much for the other plot holes that are.
It's the way that it plays out feels pretty contrived to me. Where it's like, one, it feels like Eragon should have been like eviscerated.
Yes,
and so the idea that, as portrayed, the idea that Brom can sacrifice himself to take one arrow, and the fact that that one less weapon was thrown at Eragon opened up an opportunity for him to best Durza. It's weak. It's too contrived.
Yeah, I get that. I think just everything else involved with Gil'ead though is able to really support it, but I agree. Like it's cliche. There's plot holes.
Anyway, moving on, he is almost immediately replaced with Murtagh.
Murtagh, yeah. And again, I love Murtagh as a character. In the audiobooks, he has like a Scottish accent, so that like throws me off a little bit.
And again, this is a character that would have really gone places in subsequent films, but we never got there.
However, there is going to be a Disney Plus TV show.
There are whisperings of a new adaptation.
Christopher Paolini's confirmed it.
I have a feeling that, I'm not connected in the industry by any measure, but it feels like it's going to happen just based on the news articles and the characters involved.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about that?
I'm going to watch it. Obviously,
it will get discussed on this podcast in some capacity.
Yes.
Probably not an episode by episode, but we'll see.
Well, it could be amazing. I have a feeling though.
I hope it's amazing.
I hope it's amazing too, but I have a feeling it's going to be more like the Percy Jackson TV show, where there's a lot of like it's good, but it's not like it's too much of a kid show.
That's what I'm expecting as well. I'm expecting it to go along the lines of the Percy Jackson or the new live action Last Airbender adaptation, where it's like we did everything just the safest and like the most like dotted the T's, crossed the I's, and Disney gave us all the money and it's gonna be fine. And honestly, I want it to be great. And I'd love to be proven wrong. Like Disney still on occasion puts out some stuff that doesn't suck.
Yeah.
But I just have a feeling that at the end of the day, I'm going to be the asshole that says the 2006 film was more interesting.
It could be like a Mandalorian season 1 situation, though.
That's kind of what I was getting at. I had some fun with the Mandalorian.
Yeah, I'm hoping, like, I'd love to be proven wrong. I definitely think it's going to be more along the lines of the Percy Jackson series, where it's good, but more for children.
Yeah.
But everybody that's grew up with the Eragon are adults now, so.
Yeah, and I think it's also just part of this larger cultural situation we found ourselves in, where there aren't really like event films or series or like art pieces anymore.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. Our world has become more like specific. I mean, that's the very fact that makes it so that we can do a dragon movie podcast, and like the people who want to hear that are going to find it. And,
exactly.
And that's a lot of fun. But I don't think there's even a chance that this new Eragon series is going to get as many eyes on it as this film did in 2006.
We'd love to be proven wrong.
So that's just me saying, like, I don't think it's going to be like a big thing.
I'd love it if they still get Jeremy Irons as Brom.
It's like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. They're just like, no, she's great. So we're just gonna pluck that out of this, and she's still the character, even though it doesn't make any sense at all.
And I'll say this, like, Jeremy Irons' age now more reflects. It's closer reflected to what Brom's age is.
How much money are they going to have to pay Academy Award winner Jeremy Irons to reprise his role as Brom in the new Disney Plus Eragon series?
This is Disney we're talking about.
Fair. If anybody is good for the check.
Mickey's got the cheese, Austin. Mickey's got the cheese.
It could be an Ewan McGregor in the Kenobi series type situation.
And from what I understand, like, Jeremy Irons doesn't have really any bad things to say about this movie.
Not that I've caught. Honestly, like, nobody involved with it really does. I mean, it wrecked Fangmeier's directorial like ambitions, and I'm sure that he's bothered about that. But everybody that worked on the film seems to agree that they gave it their best go, and they're like, people didn't really like it, but I don't, that's like, we tried something.
Yeah, they threw something against the wall, didn't quite stick, they moved on. But before we get too off track,
no, that's what this podcast is about.
That is true. Eragon, Saphira, Murtagh, and Arya are making their way because Arya making their way downtown because Arya, the poison now is affecting her, and she's like,
and this is Fellowship of the Ring when Frodo gets poisoned, so they have to rush to the river, the elves. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, but they're doing it well.
And then because like as they're rushing, the Urgals start closing in.
Yeah,
and they have to go into the Varden, and they go through the waterfall, and sure enough, ta-da! They're there.
They made it.
Which, to me, again, in the books, Murtagh was like, I cannot go to the Varden. I will not go to the Varden. Like,
and in this film, it ends up being, he does show up at the Varden, and they're like, and there's that exchange between them. You made this beautiful printout, so I will get...
You go ahead and try to pronounce his name.
Never mind.
Ajihad.
Yeah, that'll appear on screen for the YouTube version. But the character of Ajihad has like a bit of a stare-off with Murtagh, and then he's like, "You are the son of... that means that you can't be here."
He's the son of Morzan, which we established earlier. Morzan is the person who, one, killed Brom's dragon, and two, Brom killed him and got the sword.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So
circles with her.
So he is the son of a big bad. He says that he doesn't get to choose his father, and then Eragon's like, "He's with me. He's good.
He's my friend."
And that solves all the problems because Eragon is the boss because he has a dragon now.
Well, no, because Murtagh gets arrested. They throw him in a cage.
Oh, yeah, they do that. But then he doesn't stay in the cage very long.
Well, it's because a flaming Urgal knocks down the...
Lucky break.
But I loved this sequence in the book when Eragon arrives to Farthen Dûr, the dwarf city, and there's so much. I feel like they're running short on time. It really feels like all the actors at this point are sort of done. Like,
yeah, and we already indicated that, but so this is supposed to be the dwarf city?
That's the thing. The guy
they make mention of dwarves.
Gary Lewis, who's the guy with the white robes and he has the long staff like thing. He's the dwarf king. There is no one, like, he's like half a head shorter than Gil'ead. Like, they just, again, this is my frustration and laziness. They made no effort to distinguish the elves as being elves. They literally just need to point pointy ears. I could 3D print it for less than like $3. They just put those things on. And then they literally just did Lord of the Rings. They can show us that they know that they can do the height differentiating things. They don't do that with any of the dwarven characters.
That sounds like a lot of work.
Laziness.
When you point it out like that in these instances, yes, I am feeling your point of laziness in the production here. But also, for the things that they did put their efforts into,
amazing.
It's stellar.
It is. But they cut it again. I really feel like once they arrived at Farthen Dûr, they're done. Like they want to move on to the next project. Like
yeah, it also the Varden feels like 25 people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And this is yeah, they are supposed to be kind of like a bootstrap, like underground, like grassroots sort of effort.
Yeah,
but not to this degree. Especially knowing, like, we see the forces that Durza is amassing. Yeah, it's disappointing. And to your point on like the laziness in portraying other like races of creature, I do think that is something that you feel that absence. Like
yes.
you compare that to other massive scale fantasy films where just the mere presence of that has a transportative effect.
I would have almost rather them just completely like, no, you know what? We're taking some real liberties here. They're all human.
Like, Game of Thrones it.
Yeah, just Game of Thrones it at that point. If you're already deviating that far off from the book material, go the extra mile. Just they're all humans. Urgals are just more of the like
yeah, and this is to your point of like choose a side.
Yeah, exactly. Like that for me, that was the biggest frustration is like they tried to be original, but they weren't really original. But they were original, but they weren't original.
Anyway, what happens next?
They start
right because there's going to be a big battle because there has to be a big battle at the end of the movie.
There has to, and they sort of just like some dwarves were killed. That means some Urgals are coming.
Oh no!
And so they get Eragon outfitted for war, and we already talked about that scene, but I think he looks really good in the armor. I know people say that he looks awkward.
Again, I think he looks awkward, but he's supposed to. But
exactly.
We broke it down.
Yeah. And I also think Arya looks, because Arya, they suck the poison out. She's fine. Arya looks really good in her armor and has, again, that, like, they're trying to portray her as elvish because she has, like, the very unique armor and has, like, the feathers in her hair, trying to show that she's an elf. And
we need the ears. It's not that hard. You're absolutely right on that point. Do you know who looks stupid in the armor?
Who looks stupid?
Saphira.
Yes.
And I haven't decided yet whether or not that's going to factor into my score, but we have a few minutes before we get to that point.
We got a few more minutes. I also do want to point out Durza has a Saruman moment.
He sure does. And this is the point where like he's starting to look like evil and like his face is getting messed up and all that.
I just wish they would have done it at night.
Ooh, yeah, where he's like raising his that would have really read. You get the torches on the army.
Mm-hmm. And you could have like a big bonfire either behind him or in front of him, so it's like really illuminating. And again, like it's in the middle of the day and he just looks like I came out.
All right, let's go. Time for a war.
Did everyone clock in?
And that's also CGI 101 that we've established in this podcast. Like,
exactly.
make it at night, it's going to look a lot better.
No, it's...
Not that it looks bad.
No, it doesn't look bad. And I think they just want us to see Durza's, like, exalted form, you might say, and get a good look at that.
All right. But then it's battle time.
And then it's battle time. And Eragon's having that self-doubt. And Saphira is like, when we're separated, we're weak. But when we come together, nothing can stop us. And then Eragon's like, then are we one? And Saphira...
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the problem with the ending, which is so generic and unmemorable, other than a few things which we'll make note of here in a second. It's like, at the end... Yes, there's them like coming together and being stronger, whatever. It really does just feel like Saphira decides she's going to breathe fire now, and Eragon decides he's going to be better at magic because the plot needs it.
I really wish that they would have done, like, again, I completely understand they didn't have enough time to do with what they did in the book, but Saphira does not discover that she has fire breathing abilities until like literally the second before Eragon kills Durza. And Saphira blowing dragon fire doesn't actually kill Durza, but it distracts Durza enough for Eragon to stab Durza through the heart.
Yeah, and then kind of empowers him.
Exactly. I wish they would have gone something around that route, but
alas.
Yeah,
it's all like, it's fine. The action here, I just wish it was PG-13.
Yeah,
is really what it comes down to.
Because I mean, it was cool, like all the fire and like the Urgals catching on fire, and then just almost like an anthill, the Empire troops coming down, and
yeah, and I do think that's an effective shot, because while I do hold that that's a valid criticism, my whole like the Varden feels like 24 people.
20 dudes.
20 dudes just hanging out. They swung by the Renaissance Fair. The best beard competition.
Yep.
But then you do see that shot of all the evil forces coming in, and you're like, oh, they're screwed.
Yeah. Mind you, those aren't in the books. It's only Urgals in the books. So,
oh well.
Oh well. And I think it's time for us to talk about the dragon in the room that comes.
Yeah, so they wanted to have a dragon fight.
They wanted it
so bad, and they just had to make this ending so big, and it's all very contrived and sort of invented for this moment. And I do understand the desire to want the dragon to be a part of the final action sequence.
Yes.
But I almost feel like the emotion would have been so much greater if it was like, okay, you have your dragon battle moment in like the battle where, you know, she's lighting the pools on fire and taking care of the Urgals and all that. And then it's just Eragon versus Durza. But then it's like, okay, does that go against their whole like together we're stronger thing? I think the way to do it is that there is a separation, and then Saphira comes in there at the end, like you say.
Yeah.
But instead, we Durza does his big level 7 spell and summons a like shadow dragon beast.
And we'll dive more into it when we do our dragon grading. I actually like the dragon. Like,
it's cool.
It's a cool dragon. I wish it would have shown like Durza deteriorating more or something, like showing some sort of strain. Otherwise, it's like, why don't you just always have a dragon?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Yeah, that would have really come in handy in that first encounter, when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, like, who knows?
It's also like, well, what's the big deal of having a dragon? If you just reach a high enough magic level, you can just conjure one.
Exactly.
Like, maybe that's why Galbatorix in this universe isn't that concerned with getting a new legion going.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
They thought it through. I'm sure that's what it is.
They thought everything through.
If we'd have gotten the whole trilogy, all of this would have made so much sense. I just know it.
John Malkovich would have been terrifying in movie 3.
I really don't think there's much more to comment on in the encounter. Eragon, they best Durza.
Yeah.
They stab him through the heart.
It's the tail launch.
Yes, it's the tail launch because there's a very self-conscious line earlier in the film where they're like, one day the best riders can ride from anywhere, even the tail. And Eragon's like, not yet. Not ready for that one.
That seems like a doozy.
He's fine. He's not that bad in the movie. But they do that, and then they have a crash landing, which is actually really well rendered. Yes. I gotta say, you feel that impact in your core.
And Saphira was injured by Durza's dragon.
Yes, and then Eragon decides to be better at magic and heals her.
Which I always, when I was little, I was convinced that he said hell. Like, he just screamed it because he was like, Wheezy! Hell! But I was just convinced when I was younger, he was just screamed hell. I'm like, oh my goodness. He just said a naughty word.
He said the H word.
He said the H-E double hockey stick word.
Oh no. They said it was PG.
Oh my God.
I don't know what that's PG. Like, hell is definitely allowed in PG movies.
But that just shows where I was at then. But Eragon wakes up and Murtagh's out of his cell. Well, first you see they won the battle. Like, it was very clearly a costly win. Murtagh broke out of his cell because of the flaming Urgal and saves King Hrothgar. So he's got the good graces there.
And then Eragon goes and says goodbye to Arya.
Yep. And
it's kind of nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of... Well, that's the thing. Like, Arya and Eragon's relationship, there's like a hint of flirtiness that's in their relationship, but at the end of the day, there's really nothing there until the very end of the series. So I think that's very...
Again, we just needed the other films.
Yes, it's oddly book accurate.
So I think... we'll get final thoughts in just a second.
Yeah.
Do you think if they'd have been able to make the sequels, do you think that there would have been room for improvement, or would that have just been a disaster? What's your take there?
I think Arya and Eragon's relationship.
No, the whole of it.
Oh, the whole of it.
How do you think that those would have panned out? Because that was the intention. This movie made money.
Yeah.
By the way, on a $100 million budget, it grossed $250 million worldwide. Only 75 million of that coming from domestic, but that's a overt profit, and they were considering it, but it really is one of those examples where the reaction was just so bad they knew that they couldn't get away. It's like, you think about the fact that we got one of those Tim Burton like Alice in Wonderland sequels.
Yes.
Like, and granted, the first one of those made, I think, $1 billion. But
how?
I'm just saying, like, we are not that many like parallel universes off from this trilogy wrapping up.
I do think it would have been fine. I think we would have had actually a better view of this first movie. I think their big concern was that they saw that Jeremy Irons was what everybody was loved about this.
They are down a Jeremy.
Yeah, they're down a Jeremy, but I feel like they had an opportunity to find, again, spoiler alert, an Ormus figure who is Eragon's teacher in the second book.
Who would you cast as Ormus?
Ooh, that's...
You can't say Ian McKellen. That's too obvious. Even though he was considered for the role.
You know who I would?
Of Brom.
I'm blanking on his... Oh, Hugo. Hugo
Weaving?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think...
Well, that, again, you got the Lord of the Rings connection. I'm sure that would have been at the top of their list, but he'd have been great.
I think he would have done a really... Because, I mean, Elrond in Lord of the Rings has a lot of the same vibes as Elrond, in my opinion. As Ormus in the series. Where he's a very wise elf, he's an ancient elf, and he's the... Spoiler alert, last dragon rider alive from that generation, excluding Galbatorix. And I think Hugo has some like mentor vibes to him.
Yeah. Yeah, that could have been good. But as for the rest of the trilogy, you mentioning that they're down a Jeremy, and also for all my suspicions about Malkovich, who I think is totally wrong.
They would have had to recast him.
Well, and I hate when they do that, but in that case, it probably wouldn't have been right. I have a feeling that if they had been given the same budget for the sequels, that they probably would have been better than this movie.
Yeah.
Overall, I don't think that we're close to that happening. Even if they had been greenlit, I bet that the budget would have been cut, and they wouldn't they wouldn't have been able to cast like prestige like Oscar winning actors on the level that they were for this film.
Yeah.
And it probably wouldn't have been good. If I could snap my fingers and like no cost to me, I could just have those movies, I'd give them a watch.
Yeah.
But I'm not looking to like empty my bank accounts over that Kickstarter.
I really do think that Garrett Hedlund, I feel like he would have done a great job as Murtagh.
He's good. Honestly, here's another question that I was considering. I feel like he would have been a better Eragon.
Yeah.
And if only for like that's the age range you probably should have been pulling from.
Because Murtagh becomes the villain. He becomes like, he is essentially Darth Vader. Like,
yeah.
And
it's great.
Yeah, and he has that dark look to him. He has like, I don't want to say the evil look, but while Ed Speleers has that almost Luke Skywalker look, Garrett Hedlund has that Kylo Ren vibe going for him.
Sure. But how do you feel about the film overall? I think we're ready to move into our wrap-up, closing thoughts.
Well, do we want to do that? Because in our grading system, we have the...
Yeah, because then we can kind of fast-track that aspect of it. Just whatever you feel you want to say in closing.
If we're separating the book completely from the movie, it's okay. I obviously rewatched it as a child. Again, it infuriates me to the point that I literally have screamed a couple times on this podcast.
Yeah, I've been watching the levels here like, okay. I'm sorry if some of that was blown out, but I was not expecting that intensity.
This is authenticity right here. You're getting the real feel. So it's all right. Like it's a good, I love Saphira. Like I genuinely love Saphira excluding the voice. And I think the flying sequences are pretty good. I think you said it best. When they were trying to copy other movies, they did a great job. They did a terrible job at being original.
It's a great technician's piece.
Yes.
Where I'm not really convinced that like this is a great piece of storytelling, but like scene for scene, like pulling off the effects and putting you in this world and rendering a dragon, which is the kind of main thing we're trying to explore with this podcast, I think it's a success.
Many lists put this in the top 3 best dragon movies out there.
They sure do. and I will just say, like, I think this went great, and I'm glad that we chose this as our starter, because when I've talked to people about the fact that we have a dragon movie and television podcast, the movie that has come up the most is Eragon.
Yeah. Everyone saw it.
It has an awareness beyond the vast majority of material we will end up talking about on this show.
Yes.
And most of that is comes with a profoundly negative feeling.
Yes.
Which I feel is unjustified. Like the level of it is unjustified. And I think I've made my case for the whole like adaptation thing.
Yeah.
But as far as like a true blue dragon movie, there aren't that many that are so decidedly about a boy and his dragon as this one. And we've joked about how your whole thing and the impetus for this podcast is a movie can't be a 10 out of 10 unless it has a dragon in it.
Correct.
But what we're getting at there is that's like the ultimate icing on a perfectly baked cake.
Yes.
If you disagree and truly all you're looking for is a movie with a dragon in it, like if that's all you want and that's all it takes for a movie to like fill up your soul, this movie's a near masterpiece.
I can't argue with that at all. Again, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners who I have a feeling that we have quite a few book readers in the audience, which is safe to assume that we have a few people that read The Inheritance Cycle. I just think that I'm sure we have a lot of people that just feel the rage that I feel when they watch it, because it was I'd still consider this one of my favorite. I know it's not a popular belief. I'm sure most of the world would disagree with me. I loved The Inheritance Cycle more than I loved Harry Potter, but that's just because...
That's a take, man.
Again, I understand. Harry Potter is more original. It's an expansive story, but for me, Eragon had everything that I loved. It had the battle scenes. It has dragons. It's literally a sword fights. It's got it all. And
so...
And they massacred my boy over here.
Which, again, I'm... Me having been so far removed from that, which I actually do think it'd be fun to revisit, maybe in audiobook form, just kind of more treat it like a podcast, a bit more of a background. I think it'd be fun to go back to The Inheritance Cycle. I do not think that the differences between like the source material and this make it as bad a movie as people say. Where I made a master list. We have a master list private. This is not for y'all to peruse. Maybe on Patreon. But one day. We're definitely not there yet. But this master list is in the neighborhood of 150 films.
Yeah.
That we feel fit the criteria of this podcast that we would like to get to at some point.
Yes.
If you sort this list by audience score, low to high, Eragon is the lowest rated entry. The lowest rated entry. Which is insane to me. And like, they're not all, they're not all winners and they're not all stinkers. But just looking at this list, which I've seen, like 50, 60% of, this really feels like middle of the pack to me.
Again, I really think it just comes back to people's expectations. Like the book had people so excited. And if you look back, I saw a couple of the movie posters that were released. The movie posters looked good. Like
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's necessarily what ruined the film.
No.
It's more the book thing.
It's definitely more the book. And I don't know if you know this, Austin, but book fans get a little psycho.
They're a little fanatical.
If my face turning red and the audio levels were not an indicator.
But what I'm trying to get at, and the main thing that I want to impart in this recording, is that maybe you'd be a little happier. And I'm not talking to you directly, just like a little advice from Uncle Austin here to the audience. As a film viewer, I feel, and it has been my experience, that you will find it a much more rewarding experience to attempt to meet a film on its own terms and sort of divorce yourself from any expectations until you actually sit down with the film and start to get a sense of what they're actually trying to do in the meat of this media. I think that the Eragon, while definitely not a masterpiece. I'm not like recommending that everybody go out and buy the Blu-ray and we need to reclaim this film. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying that it's not as bad by any stretch as its reputation has made it out to be. And I think that there is a lesson that has become more apparent to me in this rewatch. And just like, again, taking a movie for what it is and not what you specifically in your own brain want it to be.
No, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Damn it, I really wanted to use this as my ending, so I'm just going to fast track it if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Because the film ends with a original song by one Avril Lavigne, "Keep Holding On," which, again, written for the film. And I really think that you can say my feelings on this film, Eragon, match almost perfectly with my feelings about the one and only Avril Lavigne. Where we are not by any stretch pushing the form. We are not reinventing the medium. It's more about the formula. And in an Avril Lavigne song, when that chorus hits, they've got the right EQ. They've got the right backing. The mix is just right. The lyrics are just sticky enough. And you're like, yeah, I will keep holding on. Hey, I don't like your girlfriend. Why did it have to get so complicated?
If only the executives had the same feeling towards this series.
Well, okay. You're kind of interrupting my point here because good joke.
I'm sorry.
When Eragon's cooking, when it's following the formula, when they're doing the effects, when Weta's in there rendering the frames, it works. And I really can't deny it on a fundamental level. I think that there's a lot of good in this film, and I'm a little surprised that it was received so poorly, so universally poorly at the time.
Well, speaking of how people universally took things, I think it's time to discuss dragon grading.
Right. So, general thoughts on Saphira before we get into a proper grade of this dragon in the film Eragon.
Yes, and like I've said throughout it, I actually really like Saphira. I really like that they incorporate feathers. I think that's a fun little thing that they do. I love just the look.
It's not just feathers though, because they have feathers and tufts of hair with the scales and the spikes, and that feels kind of like a hodgepodge on paper, but they really pull it off in the final result.
No, I agree. I genuinely, other than the voice, I think that the score is going to reflect it.
Yeah, I mean, I have some issues with that as well, but overall, I think the effects work is great, and we're going to get into all of that, but I think that Saphira will grade surprisingly high considering both of our comments on the actual film that she's portrayed in.
I think there's only going to be really... let's just get into it.
Right, okay. So we have a 5-part grading system for our dragons, the first aspect of which is design. So we're going to be doing each of these a score out of 10, 0 being abysmal, 10 being incredible. Yeah. So scale of 0 to 10. As far as design, I'm feeling a 7 for Saphira, which translates to a very good. I don't think it's amazing, and there's something in the docileness of it where when she has to be badass and wreak havoc, that doesn't really read, but it also makes it an undeniably kind and good guy dragon.
Yes.
And also again, in all of that, the feathers, the texture of this dragon is really excellent. So that's a 7 for me. What do you think?
I gave it a 7 as well. I think you hit it really the nail on the head. I really do enjoy that she has it's more than just legs for her front arms. Her front arms are actually arms. You see her holding Eragon when they do the first flight. I really enjoy that. It's we're so used to a Game of Thrones where it's the wyvern look of the wings and the back legs. So when we actually do get to see the extra appendages, I really like that. And I'm just a sucker for blue dragons. I'm just really a sucker.
But it's a good blue.
It's a good blue.
It's like a reptile blue.
Yes.
Which we made that comment on the jelly bean.
The jelly bean.
But yeah, it's just the they chose just the right hue to where she pops, but she doesn't feel like a cartoon character.
Yes, I agree.
As far as the special effects, I mean, I don't have much more to say than I have throughout this episode. I think that you might disagree. I think this is a 9.
A 9
on special effects. There are a few instances, like, it doesn't necessarily reach that like perfect illusion of like, oh my goodness, that's a dragon. That's a real life dragon that I'm seeing before me. But it looks leagues better than the vast majority of CGI characters we see in our modern era 20 years on.
I will say this, like this, I might be surprising. I gave it a 9 as well, strictly because like
hey, we are looking pretty
2 for 2.
No, we're looking pretty Skublockus Ven here. What's this about?
No, I genuinely, that's what I was thinking of. Like, if you look at the special effects for Saphira now, I mean, like then, in the special effects of what they would possibly do now, leagues different. Like, I've seen like the special effects in some of these like Marvel movies look worse than what Saphira looks like now, like back then.
Yeah, and it's in the like tactileness where, again, looking at the dragon, it's not necessarily the whole real life dragon, but it does feel like a real element in the film at all times.
Yeah,
like, where he's riding it, and like you do truly feel like Eragon can reach out and touch any part of this dragon.
Yeah, and you really don't feel like Ed Spielers. I can't get his name. Ed Spielers is not talking to a tennis ball. It doesn't feel like he's talking to a tennis ball, which again, I know that's more on Ed's part, but still.
Yeah. All right. Now, as far as the character of Saphira, this is actually going to rate pretty high for me as well.
Okay, let's hear it.
Now, there aren't super strong characters in this film. Really, there's some meat in the text, but it just moves so darn fast that, again, it's just such a crime that we skipped over that beginning, like, raising Saphira section. like I honestly feel like if we'd have got that, there would have been room for this to be a 10 out of 10 character dragon.
Oh, for sure.
As it is, I'm actually still going to give this an 8.
Oh, wow.
Which is a great to me. I like that because this is divorced from the special effects, and this is divorced from the voice actor, which to me would have factored more into the special effects. I have a feeling you're going to put that more into the character here, but I like that she has a legitimate connection with Eragon. Mm-hmm. They have sort of a push and pull in their relationship. I like that she speaks. Yes. This does so much for a character when they can actually do that, and she does legitimately emote. Like, there is room within this dragon to read her face and understand what she's going through. There are also many instances where she has like shared jokes with Eragon, or like she'll give a little attitude to Brom here and there. It's an 8 to me.
I get where you're coming from, but as you alluded to, the voice just really got to me. The voice, I just couldn't really get over the voice. And it just really seemed like that Eragon was talking to a human oftentimes. Like the conversations they were having, it just seemed like it would be like two characters that are human or humanoid having conversation. It didn't feel like it was a conversation with a dragon. So because of that, I gave it a 5. I mean, 5 is not bad, but it's mainly because Saphira didn't feel like a dragon to me, dialogue-wise, and the voice was just too humanoid. They literally could have just changed, like, they could have had more bass. They could have literally done anything that would have taken 5 minutes.
I hear you, and I don't necessarily disagree.
And for me, it didn't feel like Eragon was talking to a dragon, so that's why I gave it a 5.
Now, for the film, we've been talking for 2.5 hours now about it, so I don't feel the need to go any deeper. I think it's okay. I think Eragon is a 5 out of 10 film, which somehow is much higher than what it appears to have averaged on various platforms, but that's what it is for me rewatching in 2024.
I gave it a 4.
Okay. Which we've listed as a mediocre.
Yeah, I think it's mediocre, and again, I really tried to keep my feelings about the book out of that.
I appreciate it.
but I gave it a 4.
Now, we for our last category, we get to X Factor, which is kind of a catch-all. And I think that again, I've already given Saphira credit for personality. Yeah. So that's not necessarily what I'm grading here. Here we're looking for something different, something that's outside of the norm of what we see in a quote-unquote typical dragon movie.
Yeah.
And this is actually going to be a 5 for me as well.
Okay.
Because in some ways this is to the film's benefit. But in this instance, it's not, where this feels very like standard dragon.
Yeah.
Where it's the protagonist's blue good guy dragon with the 4 legs and the wings. It's a very standard design, rendered well, but I'm kind of struggling to come up. Well, then again, I do like the telepathy thing. That's a little different. So I actually think I'm going to bump it up to a 6.
Bumping up to a 6.
But that's a good. What are you feeling?
I, ironically enough, gave it a 5 as well, without bumping it up to a 6. But almost like what you just said, like a lot of the things that we see is very generic. I do think it's unique because of that telepathy that it's going on. The telepathy. It's
a something in this movie. Like whether or not it works, it's a little different, which is where I think you get credit in this category.
But for me, like I don't feel like I feel like there needs to be a little more than
fair. And this is also the category where it really is just like your opinion. Yeah. So whatever you want to factor into it, that's on you.
And for me, like I would give it a higher score, but I already gave the high score of the design and the special effects for the coloring, because the coloring is just beautiful. But I gave it a 5.
Which brings our final score for Saphira, taking all of our scores and averaging them out. That comes to a 6.5 out of 10 for Saphira in the 2006 film Eragon,
which is higher than some of our dragons in season 1 wrap up
of House of the Dragon. Yeah. Check out that video if you want to see us grade 5 of the dragons from the first season of House of the Dragon. That was a lot of fun to film. We have one more to go through though.
Yes.
And I'm hoping we can fast track this one a little bit more, because we are now creeping into the longest record we have ever done. But I'm still having fun. I'm good for it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do a lightning round.
What are we calling this dragon?
Durza's dark magic.
Okay.
Because Saphira does just refer to it when Eragon's like, "What is that?" And Saphira's like, "Dark magic."
Okay. We are going to do another grade for the dragon thing that Durza conjures at the end of this film.
Yeah.
Now, I led the charge on the last grading, so I think I'm going to turn that over to you to give us your score out of 10 for design.
Design, I thought it was fun. It gave me a lot of Bat vibes almost. I do think, like, I get the dark smoke coming off of it as being ominous, but I think it just, I would have loved to see more details because of that. I gave it a 6.
Not bad. Not bad.
It's a fun dragon. I definitely do enjoy it, but I think I'm going to give a lot of more laurels to it for the special effects. But
sure,
I give it a 6.
I'm feeling more like a 7.
A 7?
Yeah, and I feel similarly, clearly. But I like the teeth.
Yes.
And I'm down for like a wicked entity. So to me, that's a very good. It's a cool design for an evil creature for our main dragon to battle.
Yeah. Which for me, I gave it an 8 for special effects. And ironically, the head, especially the teeth, is the reason, because I feel like the teeth, they just looked like massive sharp teeth that are able to just tear apart a dragon. And I feel like it came across, it didn't look bad. It definitely helped being shot at night, but I gave it an 8.
Okay. Do you have more on that?
Nope, that's it.
I'm going to give it a 7 there. Because we have established these special effects in this are very good. And the only thing is, this creature does look like just kind of a well-rendered dark cloud.
Yeah.
Which I give it more credit in the design because that sounds really cool. And it sounds like there can be more that you do with it. But in reality, in the actual rendering in the film, it's more like a big black lump of cotton candy with the vampire teeth on front of it. Yeah, yes. You can make your own over at the state fair.
You can.
What about the character of this dragon?
1. I gave it a 1. Literally, and here's my reason why. It has more to do with Durza literally could have done this at any time. It gave us no like ramifications of Durza like taking any strife for having this.
Like, no one mourns for this dragon.
No one mourns for this dragon. It's literally just magic and like created. It's not a 0 because it's clearly like a vicious dragon, but that's all we get from it. And it's not even a dragon. It's dark magic. Like it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Nobu from My Hero Academia.
Yeah.
To me, this seems like just like a mindless entity. Yes. If it's even living at all. I'm giving it a 1 as well.
Okay. We already did film.
Right. So that's a 4 for you and a 5 for me.
Yep.
And all that remains is the X Factor.
I'm
really interested to see where you go with this.
I gave it a 4.
A 4?
Yeah, like, as cool as it is, and it's made completely for magic, I want to see, like, in this world where magic comes at a price, I want to see that price from Durza. I love the design. I love how cool. I love that it's made out of magic, and I know that shades have extra ability, like, almost, they can do spells that almost everybody else can because they have access to it. But if that's the case, then how are shades not able to kill Galbatorix? Like that's so there has to be.
You're thinking about it way too hard.
I know, but that's the X Factor.
Okay, right. But I'm going the opposite direction though. I think that X Factor is all this thing has. I'm giving it an 8.
An 8.
Double. I think the X Factor on the Durza's dark magic dragon deserves much higher than a 4.
Hey.
It's okay. I'll keep it brief. We are early in this podcast.
We are early.
You know, we hope to keep this going a very long time. We're going to be talking about a lot of dragons, issuing a lot of grades, assuming we proceed with this format.
Yes.
I think it is tremendously unlikely we will ever encounter another quote-unquote dragon like this. It is a being conjured from dark magic. It is a very unique design, kind of getting extra points in 2 categories for that. It's vicious. It's different. I'm sticking with my 8.
You know what? I'm not going up to 8, but you could take me up to a 6.
Whoa! We have a score alteration. Last minute.
I still, again, it still stands for me. Like I wish
we are establishing some etiquette here, though, Bryce. I guess we can change a score.
We can. Like, this is our podcast. The small council is in session. We make the rules as it comes.
I think you mean the smallest council.
Smallest council is in session. We make the rules.
Nobody can stop us. I guess they can stop watching, which would suck. But we'll still do it. Or listening. We like the audio listeners, too.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Please rate on Spotify, by the way. That would be awesome.
Yeah, give us a rate.
But that brings the total score for Durza's Dark Magic Dragon in the feature film from 2006, Eragon, to a 5.3 out of 10, which is honestly a little higher than I was expecting. Good for him.
Yeah, he did all right.
I think it's a him, or maybe an it.
He's a personification of Durza. I feel like we could say that.
Yeah, well, Durza is probably super sexist. It's not shown in the film, but that's what they cut out to make it PG.
Yeah. He is the biggest misogynist on the planet. He is the first person to subscribe to Hustler's University.
But I think we're to the wrap up.
I think we're to the wrap up.
Thank you for everyone for listening, for watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
What do you want to ask the people? What do you want to do in the comments section? What do you want to hear?
Who was your favorite performance, and who are you sad that we never got to see later on in the series for our book readers? So what characters that were not shown or didn't get as much screen time were you excited to see portrayed?
Let us know in the comments. Follow me on Letterboxd at The Media Binge. My name is Austin. Follow us at Big Liz Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We're on the Facebook. Figuring out Twitch. And other than that, we'll see you guys next week.
Big Liz Pod.
Or
The Hobbit.
The animated.
The animated Hobbit.
Yeah, Peter Jackson, we're going to push that one out a ways. But
We got to just really tease y'all with that. But good night, all.
later.
That's all for this week's Dragon Lore. Takes cold and hot, spread shore to shore. Enjoyed yourself? Please join the squad. Follow on social media at Big Liz Pod. And one quick reminder before you go, to rate, review, and share the show. Thank you for listening. It means a lot. See you next week, same time, same spot.